Welcome to the BarberShop. We have one of the OGs of Indian education, having built out institutions such as ISB, Harappa, Vedica, Ashoka University, and so many more. Pramath, welcome to the BarberShop. It's a privilege to have you.
Thank you. Can I quote you on this OG? Because ये किसी ने नहीं बोला मुझे. Tyranny of the JEE rank. मेरा रैंक 994 है उन दिनों. तो कानपुर में हो जाएगा. कानपुर बेस्ट है. कानपुर ही जाना. So Pramath, what do you think? Should we partner with Russian? I said no. Why? Boss, मैं अभी तो वही बोल रहा हूँ कि मुझे why नहीं मालूम. तुम मुझे push क्यों कर रहे हो?
Talk about how education and ISB happen. You have a very personal, deeply mentor-mentee relationship with Rajat.
You know, when my father passed away, I remember talking to Rajat and saying that, now you are my father figure.
Welcome to the BarberShop. Super exciting episode for you today. We have one of the OGs of Indian education, someone who I personally respect a lot. He was obviously very senior to me at McKinsey, but is known for being the founder of institutions in India, one after the other. People call themselves serial entrepreneurs, but he is known as a serial institution builder and as a thought leader in the field of education, having built out institutions such as ISB, Harappa, Vedica, Ashoka University, and so many more. Pramath, welcome to the BarberShop. It's a privilege to have you.
Thank you. Can I quote you on this OG? Because ये किसी ने नहीं बोला मुझे.
No, absolutely true. I think so. Saisha, for example, went to Ashoka University, but then dropped out, right? Dropped out to be an entrepreneur.
Very bad. Very.
Building a business on the side.
Aditya, she could have done that there also. And you better come back.
So Saisha and her co-founder Aditya, who run Revolio.
You were both part of what? The undergrad program? And you haven't completed your undergrad degrees? To Delhi University. But we should claim credit for the two of them.
Oh, for sure.
I'm going to claim credit.
I think they'll be very happy with you.
You all should come back. You're alums.
Yeah. They went to LSE, built out the business out of London, have clients in India, moved to Bombay last year, and have now a full-fledged team in Bandra, of which you see some people here. Extraordinary how you see young entrepreneurs of today build out
Absolutely.
amazing companies and doing great work with us.
Totally.
So,
We never had I didn't have the courage at their age to even think about this.
tell me about your childhood and where you come from. We'll come to your mission orientation about education separately, but this is something I would love to know. Where do you come from, of course?
Yeah. No, I grew up in Patna. I have to say I was very lucky to have a very happy, stable family environment. My parents, mother and father, were both from Bihar, and I was the fourth child and the only son after three daughters. And obviously, must be the pressure to have a son because my sisters are 14, 11 and 8 years older, so much older.
Wow. So you basically had 5 parents.
Yes. Well, now you are touching a raw nerve because one of my brother-in-law teases my wife saying that you have 4 mother-in-laws. Mothers-in-law. So, but no, I think it was a good time to be in Patna, and my parents, because I was such a late child, had already built their own home. So sometimes even now when I think of home, I think of that home rather than my own home.
Correct.
That home is still there. I've inherited it, and my mother passed away a couple of years ago. So that home is almost like a womb, for me. It'll always be home. So I was very lucky to have that. I had parents who are very happy, loving. My 3 sisters I have a wonderful relationship with.
Are they all here in Delhi? Or?
No, so one is here, the oldest is here in Delhi, and the other 2 are in the US.
Okay.
But I'll talk more about them at some point. But so I went to there was a big focus on education. So my mother was very focused on making sure that we all got a good education. So convent school mein daughters, I went to a Jesuit school, St. Michael's, Patna. Again, spent all my life in one school. So very stable, happy environment. An interesting attribute of that time was that even though I was a late child, I was the only son and I had all the trappings of being spoilt. When I look back, my father, I think either deliberately or inadvertently, really trained me up to be what I am today. And what he used to do is give me lots of errands. He would make me do things. So, train का ticket, कभी कभी plane का ticket, seeing of people, receiving people, any arrangements, sisters' marriages. शुरू में तो I was छोटा तो coordinate the cars or pickups. As I grew older, सब कुछ देखो, टेंट वाला, खाना, डिनर, बारात का रिसीव करना, hospitality. So, and then constantly कि बैंक जाओ, डिपॉजिट करो, कैश ले आओ, ड्राफ्ट बनवाओ, पोस्ट ऑफिस में इसका इंटरेस्ट ले आओ, इसको रिन्यू कराओ. We had a small printing press. तो पेपर खरीद के ले आओ, ये गलत पेपर ले आओ, जाओ वापस जाओ, बहुत पैसे मांग रहा है, रीनेगोशिएट करो. I remember one time he was unhappy about something and I had already worked very hard on fixing whatever the problem was. So I started crying because I thought, कितना करूँ मैं, मैं तो बच्चा हूँ, you are after me.
How old were you then?
I must have been 12, 13 years old, and he said something about कि it was one of these things where he said कि उसने दिया नहीं जो promise किया था और तुमने पैसे क्यों दे दिए, तुम्हें नहीं देना चाहिए था. And I had already gone and tried to negotiate as a kid. Oh, this guy was, whatever it was, this guy was not willing to take a lower sum. So I just gave him the money and came. He was like, you should have negotiated. So anyway, when I look back on all this, I think it taught me a great deal about getting stuff done. And the more I think about my life, it has been very much about, I love getting stuff done. I love doing things. In fact, one of the reasons I left McKinsey was I was there for other reasons which I'll come back to. But it was when I went from McKinsey to ISB that I realized that actually I was good at getting stuff done. I was not just a consultant.
Or an advisor, yeah.
And in fact, then I started hating advising. In fact, now also, when people ask me for advice and they say, I'll pay you or become a consultant or I'll give you equity, I said, नहीं बस, advice free. मुझे advice के लिए पैसे नहीं चाहिए. और अगर मुझे really engage करना है तो मुझे कुछ करने को दो. I advice दे के मुझे मज़ा नहीं आता है. I'm happy to give you advice. And it's easy to give advice. So anyway, going back, that was one big defining part of
what was your father's profession, like the printing press? Is it fully?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and that actually has come a full circle. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandfather have all been writers or poets in Hindi.
Wow.
And in my grandfather and great-grandfather and their generation, there were small-time zamindars in Bihar. But वो with the British and with independence वो तो चली गई. So my grandfather was a very famous writer. My father also became a reasonably well-known writer, and as he graduated from college, which was around independence, his friends persuaded him to buy a printing press, which was more to take care of his father's books, because father was a very published author and people said that he's being rooked, he's not getting any royalty for his writings. तो उस समय लोग printing press लगा रहे थे इंडिया में independence के बाद. तो he bought an old printing press and with the intent of publishing his father's writings.
Okay.
And a few years later, he also started publishing a Hindi magazine, Hindi literary magazine, which interestingly I still publish.
Oh really?
Yes.
What's it called?
नई धारा. तो वो नाम उन्होंने रखा था ये सोचकर कि न्यू राइटिंग्स न्यू ऑथर्स को प्रमोट करेंगे, तो नई धारा के नाम से. तो that has been now running for 74 years, 73 years. So coming back, he set up this printing press, but he had no other source of income, and the landed income was gone, and he had 4 children and so on. So this printing press actually was a business.
Okay.
But in our family, we never talked about us being in business. It is much later in life when I got into business that I look back and I say we were businessmen.
Yeah.
I mean, we would be called entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur.
If you're buying paper and all of that, yeah.
No, we were, and he had a दुकान.
Correct.
हम लोग शाम को 8 साढ़े 8 बजे घर से दुकान जाते थे, दुकान बोलते थे उसको, और दुकान में वो एक डिपॉजिट बॉक्स से कैश वो गिनकर आज कितना बिका, कितने बुक्स बिकी, बिल्स क्या हैं, टैली करके जैसे कोई दुकानदार करता है, हमारा दुकान था.
करेक्ट.
और वो दुकान एक बिल्डिंग में था जो उन्होंने खरीदा था, जिसमें वो बगल वाला जो उसमें 2 दुकान थे, तो हमारा छोटा सा दुकान था और बड़ा दुकान उन्होंने रेंट पे दिया हुआ था टू मोतीलाल बनारसी दास, द वेरी फेमस स्टोर इन दिल्ली.
करेक्ट.
जिनका वहाँ पे ब्रांच था, और वो लोग ऊपर वाले पार्ट में रहते थे, तो उसका रेंट आता था. तो एक तरह से वो सारा एक कहो तो रियल एस्टेट, बुक शॉप, प्रिंटिंग प्रेस का बिजनेस था.
क्लियर यील्ड ऑन एसेट सिचुएशन.
बिल्कुल. और थोड़ी दूर आगे जाके वो प्रिंटिंग प्रेस था. वो एक फ्लैट बेड मशीन्स होती थी उस समय, और उस पर कुछ मुझे याद है वो ब्रिटेन का मैन्युफैक्चर था. तो मेरे ख्याल से मैंने बाद में कुछ पता किया था कि वो ब्रिटिश टाइम्स में वो इंस्टॉल किया गया था इलाहाबाद में, और वहाँ से खरीद कर ये ले आए थे सेकेंड हैंड, और उसको उन्होंने इंस्टॉल किया था. तो 70s 80 तक उसी पुराने प्रिंटिंग मशीन, वेरी ओल्ड, थंडरिंग पे वो चलता था. बट उससे एसोसिएटेड जो काम थे उसमें हम लोग बहुत इन्वॉल्व थे.
Okay.
तो मैं लोगों को बोलता हूँ, अभी तो मार्केटिंग की बात कर रहे थे, तो विंटर ब्रेक में हम लोग अपनी एम्बेसडर गाड़ी में, पीछे में डिक्की में और पीछे गाड़ी में भर के छोटे छोटे बंडल, जो भी उनके बुक्स थे, हम लोग स्कूल के बुक्स पब्लिश करते थे स्कूल की पढ़ाई के लिए, तो जो भी उनके बुक्स थे, और उसके साथ एक डायरी, एक कैलेंडर लेके स्कूल्स में जाते थे. और स्कूल्स तो बंद रहते थे, तो गांव में जाकर जहाँ जहाँ द टीचर्स आर, तो उनको ढूंढ के निकालते थे और बोलते थे कि भैया ये आप रखो, ये आपके लिए है. द आइडिया बीइंग कि दीज बुक्स दे विल रेकमेंड, दे विल चूज फॉर देयर क्लास एंड दे विल रेकमेंड, एंड देन दे विल बी बॉट बाय अस. सो दिस वाज आवर मार्केटिंग. Right now, I know that this was
trial.
This is a trial and marketing and incentivizing and giving them diaries and marketing materials with Ashok Press and Ashok Prakashan and the names.
Oh, Ashok was the name, is it?
So this is the other interesting connection. There is no connection with Ashok and Ashoka, but it was uncanny when we chose the name Ashoka. I had not thought of this. But I grew up in Ashok Press.
Some subconscious push would have.
Yeah, so anyway, going back to that story, तो हम लोग ये, it used to be called canvassing. English keyword है canvassing, right?
Correct.
But हम लोग बिहारी लहजे में उसको कन्वासिंग बोलते थे. तो कन्वासिंग जा रहे हैं, right? ये बड़ा, and हम लोग को बड़ा मजा आता था. As a kid, you are going in the nice winter mornings with the sun,
meeting teachers.
You're meeting teachers, and it used to be a game for me. It was a fun thing for me. So anyway, so I used to do proofreading, and then of course the whole printing process and the binding process. So this, when later on in life, this also became a bit of a part of this process orientation, that something needs to go from raw material to finished goods.
Correct. Which someone will pay for.
Yes. Right. And that then has to be sold. Yes, of course. And that cash comes and goes into the bank.
Correct.
Is something that I grew up on. It was very intuitive, but I never thought of myself as a business guy. We never equated ourselves to the business families. We never, and all through my life I was told, business mat karna. right?
Because it was because you felt you were more literary and
Yes.
that was the
Yes.
DNA कि हम लोग
Yes,
धंधा नहीं कर रहे, हम लोग
धंधा
लिटरेचर
नहीं
कर
कर
रहे
रहे,
हैं.
बिल्कुल. तो अभी recently जब before my mom passed away, तो she was here, so I was joking with her कि why didn't you all realize that you were doing business? तो हम लोग बिहार में बोलते भत, she would say भत कहाँ हम लोग बिजनेस करते थे, हम लोग कहाँ बिजनेस करते थे, अभी बोल रही थी वो. I said, do you realize कि मैं बिजनेस करता हूँ, हम बिजनेस करते हैं. So she said, नहीं बिजनेस, बाबूजी माय फादर बिजनेस कहाँ करते थे, वो तो राइटर थे. I said, वो प्रेस क्या था? आप लोग घर कैसे बनाए, हम लोग की एजुकेशन कैसे हुई, लड़कियों की शादी कैसे हुई, वो बैंक में जो पैसा बचा था वो सब कहाँ से आया? तो शी अच्छा वो बिजनेस था, बिजनेस है वो. बट वही तो है बिजनेस. बट हर थिंग वाज दैट फलाने ने वहां जाके पैसे गंवाए, उसने बिजनेस शुरू किया, दे हैड टू सेल द फैमिली ज्वेल्स. सो एवरीथिंग वाज about how others had frittered away their wealth and their so anyway, so yeah, that's how I grew up. And of course by the time my sisters did very well. My eldest sister became the first woman police officer from Bihar. She's an IPS officer.
Your eldest sister?
Eldest
the one
sister.
who's in Delhi now?
She's in Delhi.
Is she still in active
No,
service?
she retired. She's retired more than 12 years ago.
Oh wow.
But I just persuaded her recently to write her memoir, which just got published.
What's her name?
Her name is Manjari Jauhar, and the memoir is called Madam Sir.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Because was that what she was called?
Yes, because and a lot of people still call women police officers and women officers Madam Sir, right? Because they are a bit, what to call them, Madam Sir. So that book has done really well, and I think one of the things that shaped me was her journey and left quite an impression on me as a young child, because she had a rough time. We were a very traditional family, so she was brought up to be a bride basically, and a young bride. So I was very part of that whole process of looking for a match. As a young kid, I was trained in checking out the UPSC results, identifying all the names of the guys who were my caste, all the Sinhas, Srivastavs, Saksenas, Nigams, and all that. I remember I used to climb on top of the dining table and read, and it was a game. I didn't realize what I was doing. So she was married off very early on to a very promising IFS officer. And then that actually ended up in an ugly divorce, which was very prolonged because of, in those days, you couldn't do a divorce by mutual consent. Today, it's very easy to do that. So you actually had to fight a civil case and prove the case.
Oh, wow.
And then if you didn't like, if one person alleged, in her case, her husband's family alleged that she had done some things because of which they were asking for divorce, and you didn't agree, then you refuted those, and then they would not get a divorce.
Oh, wow. So but except if you want a divorce, basically.
Yes. So my father, and that's when I did see my father in a very different light. He said, no, I'm not going to allow my daughter to be wronged and treated in this way. So we had to file a counter case. So as a young boy, this was the other big thing that...
How old were you then? And how old was she?
So her marriage was fixed, as we would call it. I think when she was 18 years old or 19 years old. 19 years old.
And you must have been 5.
And I was 5 years old. But I remember again in this whole thing about, oh, boy's father is coming, go pick him up. Go drop him back. Right? Then the boy came, then you had to go pick him up, drop him back. Then,
big events.
So all these things are there, कि वो आए drawing room में मेरी बहन को देखने and all that. Then, step by step, how this whole thing started to unravel. the reactions of family members, this thing ki अरे बेटी है इसको तो she has to go
Live with
back and give it a shot. And I reflect on that a lot. I'm not trying to say I was very enlightened, but I remember those days so clearly, because as an innocent child who doesn't have the trappings of society yet, or doesn't have certain social norms built in, it was like very clear to me that it was unfair to send her back.
Yeah.
But I had no voice, and I could see my instinct was this is wrong.
Yeah.
And I still have so much anger about my family members, who I remember clearly. I don't think my sister remembers or other people remember, who would say ki nahi isko वापस जाना चाहिए, she has to go try, and so on. So when I now look back, I think that had a very profound impact on me. And then I saw what my parents had to go through, and those legal cases I was very intimately involved in, because as a young kid, I was very curious. So I would read all the documents when they were lying around at home. And I'd also become a typist. So often there were reams and reams of things to type. So I would start typing and nobody would stop me. They didn't realize that I was reading all this gory stuff, right? But
about your sister.
About my sister, and allegations, and also the refuting of those allegations. And then what happened in those days, you could actually ask and it was a civil case, so it was like a typical courtroom that you would see in a movie, right? So to protect confidentiality and to kind of keep things a little bit under wraps, you could ask for the court to be set up at home.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So I still remember, and this is a profound memory, that in our dining room, we actually had a court set up. So the judge would come, sit there. There would be a table, and the two lawyers would sit, and there was a witness stand. And people would depose. And all the other people would be sitting in the next room, because you could overhear the entire conversation and follow it like in a movie, right? And I would be there listening to all this.
Wow.
So it was very interesting. But the one thing that happened, which was also very inspiring, was at that time, my sister decided to take charge of her life and take the UPSC exam. And of course, everybody thought ki IS banegi, IFS banegi, और हो गया IPS में. A news crisis. And my father, who was again very conservative, who many years ago had, as she was ready to leave for Lady Irwin College, and this is all in the book, but as she was ready to leave for Lady Irwin College, said, no, I can't send my daughter, to bidai ho jayegi. So stopped her from going even to Delhi to study, and said, nahi, tum Patna Women's College mein padho. So for that father to agree to send her daughter to the police. So when she was sent, it was like, acha dekh ke aa jana. Of course, then she had a long career. And
this is Bihar cadre.
Bihar cadre, yes. So she was the third batch after Kiran Bedi. So she was the fifth in the service, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
So given these circumstances, this was the I think all lives have happy times and tough times, right? So I think we did go through a tough time, and I got to see very closely what happened, and it was a very impressionable age. I do think that the traditional thinking of my family at that time, of course, that then completely flipped, where she became an IPS officer.
Yeah.
The two other daughters were highly educated. My second sister came to the Indian Institute of Mass Communications, got a journalism degree, then went to the US, got an MBA, has had a career. My third sister was then sent for undergrad to Delhi, which was unheard of. The other two sisters studied in Patna. From first daughter not being stopped after with packed bags, ki bidai ho rahi hai, to third daughter being sent to Indraprasth College after 12th, and then to XLRI Jamshedpur for an MBA, and then marrying a Christian boy,
Oh, really?
and having a long life. Of course, there was drama for that, but so I mean that the family went completely the other way
Within 6-7 years, because
within
they
a
are,
period of very short time, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing how human beings can actually change years of conditioning if just put in circumstances where they are forced to
Yes.
think.
Yes.
Plus, your parents seem to be highly thoughtful people,
Yes.
even if they come from traditional
Yes.
background. But I'm sure the four of you kind of forced them to think.
Yes, and I have to tell you that one of the things that I've learned is that even from that time and through my professional life also, that sometimes some people give you really sound advice that flips you. You know what the answer is, but you just need one person to support you.
Yeah.
So I remember that even in the case of my sister's journey or these family decisions, there would be one uncle. When 9 uncles would be saying कि नहीं नहीं, aunts would be saying कि नहीं नहीं बेटी है जाना चाहिए क्या आप भेजो, and my father youngest in the family, my mother youngest in the family, all of them feeling
Had to listen.
obliged कि भाई ये बड़े भैया बड़ी
बोल रहे हैं।
दीदी सब लोग बोल रहे हैं तो करना है, and one person saying कि नहीं एकदम नहीं करना है, मत करना, don't give in. Or I remember one of my father's uncles saying to my father कि क्या मजाक कर रहे हैं आप, you know, she should go, she's going to be in the IPS, she'll have a career, why are you even thinking about it?
Wow.
So I have found that sometimes when people ask you for advice, if you really believe in something, you should say it as it is.
Unadulterated.
Yes, because ultimately they will do what they have to do. Yeah? They are only not going to only listen to you.
Correct.
But if there is a little small thought in their mind that they also want to do that, but they're not getting any support, that one input can change the trajectory.
I completely agree.
Can make a difference. So if somebody is asking you for advice, it's a huge responsibility and one should not hold back. Should be frank. मैं होता तो ये करता.
Correct.
मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि तुम्हें करना ही है, but अगर मैं होता तो ये करता, and that can make a huge difference to people's lives. Correct. And I have to tell you, my own judgments about my life have often been completely wrong. जो भी मैंने बहुत deliberately सोच समझ के decide किया वो गलत था.
Okay.
मतलब वर्कआउट नहीं किया.
हाँ.
लेकिन कभी कभी जो औरों ने कहा कि तुम नहीं देख रहे हो, this is the right thing for you, or you have it in you to do this, that made all the difference.
Wow.
Right. So anyway, going back to that story, so all the 3 sisters got really great education, and I was now watching all this, so there was pressure.
Yeah.
कि भाई, और थोड़ा सा वो जेंडर वाला भी होता है कि भाई बेटा तो और भी करना चाहिए इसको टाइप. बट एनीवे, ऐसा कुछ घर से प्रेशर नहीं था, एंड माय सिस्टर्स वर ऑलवेज वेरी वेरी अफेक्शनेट, सपोर्टिव. कोई कंपटीशन कभी नहीं हुआ, पेरेंट्स ने भी नहीं कहा. बट उस समय तक माय थर्ड सिस्टर हैड मैरिड, सेकंड सिस्टर हैड मैरिड एन IITian. Several of my cousins had gone to IIT, started going to IIT, doing it. So I was always very interested in writing. I was interested I was the editor of my school magazine. In fact, that was very excited because we were getting it printed in my press and all that. And I was very involved in my father's literary activities. I would go to all the Kavi Sammelans, the book launches, the Goshtis. They were also very interested in classical music. So I became very fond of Hindustani classical music. Used to go to concerts. So there was a very cultural, literary side to the life I had. It was very unlike the engineering and business life I led. But that has also kept me grounded, I think. And I've always fought to preserve that side of me, even if people didn't know publicly about it. But going back, I think it is also true that I followed the herd. Everybody was doing engineering. School में भी लोगों ने कहा कि.
Which year was this?
82 में I got into IIT. But that IIT experience has shaped a lot.
Which IIT did you go to?
Kanpur.
Oh wow, okay.
So I've talked about often, but that contrasted with the UPenn education I got for my PhD has shaped a lot of what I do now. Because this tyranny of the JEE rank, अभी भी हमारे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में हाँ जोकिंगली लोग कहते हैं अरे AIR 5 ये बोल रहा है, AIR 10 ये बोल रहा है. You know, but the truth is that you get into an institution, you get in, firstly you qualify, then you say अच्छा मेरा रैंक 994 है उन दिनों, तो कानपुर में हो जाएगा, कानपुर बेस्ट है, कानपुर ही जाना है ना. अगर तुम्हारा MIT में, हार्वर्ड में, कैम्ब्रिज में, ऑक्सफोर्ड में एडमिशन मिल जाता है तो तुम तो कहोगे ही कि भाई अगर वो चांस है जाने का तो मैं सेकंड रेट थर्ड रेट जगह क्यों जाऊं. करेक्ट. तो दैट वाज द मेंटालिटी कि भैया आई हैव गॉट अ गुड इनफ रैंक टू गेट इनटू कानपुर, तो कानपुर तो जाना ही है.
करेक्ट.
उस समय बेस्ट था, बेस्ट माना जाता. मेरे फ्रेंड्स भी थे वहाँ पे एंड सो. बट वहाँ तुम जाओ तो आई मीन, और जब कंसिडर करने लगो देन यू रियलाइज कि भाई माई रैंक इज टू लो इन द कानपुर पेकिंग ऑर्डर. तो कंप्यूटर साइंस तो बंद हो जाता है. दैट्स हाउ यू यूज्ड टू टॉक.
करेक्ट.
कि 25-30 रैंक के बाद ही बंद हो जाता है.
करेक्ट.
उसके बाद इलेक्ट्रिकल इंजीनियरिंग 100 में बंद हो जाता है, फिर मैकेनिकल 200-300, आई मीन आई डोंट रिमेंबर द डेट, बट बाय द टाइम यू गेट टू 994 तो आप मेटा करो, मेटलर्जी करो या एरोनॉटिकल करो या आई डोंट रिमेंबर और क्या था. तो इट इज रिडिक्युलस, I think, in today's day and age, that you get into an institution, but you are not good enough to study
what you want to study.
Study subjects. You're good enough. You're good enough to come to my institution, but no, you cannot study that. You can only study this because of your rank.
Yeah.
That same rank qualifies you to come in, but that rank restricts you from doing anything else.
At the age of 17, when no one really knows what they really want.
What do you know? I remember then I came in. So my brother-in-law, who was in Silicon Valley at that time, you know, internally in the family, well-to-do hero, right? He had done aeronautical engineering. So I thought कि aeronautical करेंगे यार. My brother-in-law is so successful now. He's working in computers there, and he had very detailed explained to me that it was his aeronautical engineering knowledge that helped him design disk drives. So I was fascinated by the fact that aeronautical didn't only mean flying planes or launching rockets, but he was using the same principles of aerodynamics in designing, the disk drive head that did the storage and extraction of information at that time, right? So I thought कि इसमें तो बड़ा scope है. और so when I went there, उन्होंने कहा कि तुम चूज करो, तो आई सेड कि मुझे एरोनॉटिकल करना है. और मैं अपने क्लास 12 में अपने स्कूल के एरो मॉडलिंग क्लब का प्रेसिडेंट भी था. तो मतलब
सेरेंडिपिटस.
तो एरोनॉटिकल करना है, तो हो गया कि ठीक है एरोनॉटिकल करेंगे. एंड ऑफ कोर्स एज अ किड, एज अ बॉय, यू आर ऑलवेज फैसिनेटेड बाय प्लेन्स, तो यू थिंक कि चलो गुड इनफ, फन. But then I remember that वहाँ पे काउंसलिंग के लिए गए थे हम लोग. तो काउंसलिंग में यूजुअली फैकल्टी मेंबर्स ही होते हैं. तो उन्होंने कहा कि लेकिन तुम्हारा तो रैंक बेटर है, तुम तो मेटा कर सकते हो. तो आई वाज लाइक कि हाँ बट तो वो कर लें. ही सेड हाँ, मतलब आई डोंट रिमेंबर व्हाट ही सेड, बट ही गेव इट टू इम्प्लाई कि यू हैव अ, दिस वाज द अदर साइड ऑफ इट, दैट यू हैव अ good enough rank to do a better department. Why? Because it's what the better rankers
do.
Nothing
to do with the interest in the subject.
Nothing that's to do with interest. So I also got into an उधेड़बुन कि भैया ये ठीक, मतलब कोई अच्छी चीज छोड़ रहा हूँ क्या. Very interesting learnings there also. So this obsession with rank, people taking a whole year off to retake the exam, to go from mechanical to electrical. Like now when I think about it, it is mind-blowing.
Correct.
That if you're good enough, you're good enough. Now technically there was a joint advanced test called JAT which you had to do, but you used to move one person from here to there. और क्यों? Because there's a fixed number of seats.
Correct.
Ashoka में I fight hard to say कि हम fixed number of seats रखेंगे.
हाँ.
You know, how can you admit somebody to a university and say, no, I cannot allow you to do because I have only so much seats? I mean, it's your problem to solve, yeah, not the kids' problem to solve.
Correct.
Anyway, going back to that, I fell sick in the first semester badly.
Oh God.
Got jaundice. Went home. Before that, I did my first physics quiz, got a 0. Quiz का मालूम नहीं था, quiz क्या होता है. स्कूल में क्विज नहीं होता था, कभी 0 नहीं मिला था कहीं. एंड दिस प्रॉफ हु वाज आवर ट्यूटर बेसिकली पाइप स्मोकिंग, से सिन्हा ऐसे तो नहीं चलेगा. कॉल मी बाय माय लास्ट नेम एंड सेड कि ये तो यू आर नॉट गुड इनफ. तो वो मेरे दिमाग में था. फिर 0 आ गया, फिर बीमार पड़ गया. आई वेंट होम, जॉन्डिस था. केम बैक एंड देन, and you know, these are little things, but IIT didn't care that I had jaundice. I had a bad jaundice. I was almost died. But I could go to the health center, but we used to call it the death center. I mean, I just felt that the focus on students in that way was just not there, right? There was counseling service, there was lots of support. So I don't mean to criticize that, but I just think that level of attention, it was like, देखो अब तुम आ गए हो, you fend for yourself, right? Anyway, so I didn't know, so I came back. I thought कि catch up कर लेंगे यार, स्कूल में भी कुछ classes मिस करते थे, notes पढ़ के catch up कर लेंगे. कोशिश बहुत की. फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर के एंड में सारे C's और D's आए. वो CGPA भी सोचा नहीं था. वो फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर का GPA कुछ डिजास्ट्रस 4.8 on 10 या कुछ ऐसा था. देन आई रियलाइज कि बॉस, यहाँ से टू द क्लाइम टू बी एवरेज इवन विच इज 8.0 इज ऑलमोस्ट इम्पॉसिबल, बिकॉज दिस इज गोइंग टू बी डिफिकल्ट टू कॉम्पनसेट फॉर इवन if I got A's all through the next 7 semesters. I mean, technically you could, but what was the chance of doing that? So that was a big, I don't talk about it very much, but that was my first big setback. Because I had all these starry-eyed ideas that I'll go to a MIT or a Caltech or a Berkeley. My brother-in-law had studied there. And that's when I realized that, boss, those dreams are over.
In first semester only.
हाँ, because अब तो आप टॉप नहीं करोगे, अपनी डिपार्टमेंट भी नहीं टॉप करोगे, क्लास और बैच तो छोड़ो. So then spending the next 7 semesters trying to work your way up, I think was tough. I mean,
and you were in Meta or aeronautical?
Meta. I was still in Meta. But for the first time, I think I experienced a real career setback. जो लोग बात करते हैं, it almost seems that I'm making up a setback in my life. After all, you were at IIT Kanpur, boss. तो तुम क्या बात कर रहे हो? But वहाँ तो लगता था ना कि एक तो तुम्हारा रैंक बुरा था. You could have done better in the exam. 994 लेके तुम यहाँ आए हो. You are not good enough for most of these other departments. Civil भी नहीं, mechanical भी नहीं, electrical भी नहीं, computer science तो छोड़ ही दो. Meta तुमको मिला. और third, you are only good enough for a C and D in this place. And now you have to spend the remaining 7. And outside everybody thinks you are God because you are at IIT Kanpur. Wow. अंदर you are saying कि boss, तुम तो गड्ढे हो यार, तुमको barely पास किए तुम. Anyway, I think I got immersed in all the extracurriculars, all that. एक कोर्स था, and this again has taught me a huge lesson about education and where education is going. एक कोर्स था. So IIT Kanpur actually, and our IITs, a lot of people don't realize, are great examples of liberal education. The way they were set up is that your core and your foundation is to expose you to all disciplines of engineering before you start to major, which is really the philosophy of a liberal education, breadth and depth.
Yeah.
Right. And it worked. It worked for me. Of course, we could have done more humanities and social sciences. I did not appreciate that at that time. IIT did offer courses. Some were okay, some were not so okay. So it was generally patchy. It was not impressed upon us. It was seen as more as electives. They should have been part of the foundation.
Correct.
Actually. But anyway, that apart, there was one course called Introduction to Computer Programming. I loved it. I still think that my brain works. I'm a great coder. I used to be a great coder, right? And to code, I think you need a certain brain, right? You have to be detailed, meticulous. You have to go. You keep going back and testing, and you can work all night just trying to make a small algorithm work. And and I could do that. I loved that, and I got an A on that course. So I surprised myself. I said, "कि boss, मुझे तो A मिल गया इसमें." और I enjoyed it. Of course, it was another thing कि computer center was air conditioned and तो जब बीटेक प्रोजेक्ट का टाइम आया तो एक प्रोजेक्ट था जिसमें प्रोग्रामिंग इन्वॉल्व था. तो आई पिक दैट. और कोई नहीं लेना चाहता, लेकिन मैंने उसको ले लिया अपनी डिपार्टमेंट में. और उसमें एक एडवांटेज था कि 2 प्रोफेसर्स थे, एक मेरे डिपार्टमेंट का और एक मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग का. उनके साथ मैं काम करने लगा. देन आई रियलाइज द वन थिंग आई डिस्कवर्ड, इफ यू रियली इंटरेस्टेड इन अ सब्जेक्ट, then you learn everything else around it.
Correct.
So now I was solving complex simultaneous partial differential equations using the finite difference method, having gotten C's and D's in math.
Possibly, yeah.
You could only solve that using a computer program, so I knew how to program, but I had to go back and learn all my math that I got C's and D's in. Right? I completely relearned math, because how do you program without understanding what the hell you are programming? So that was a huge lesson for me, that if you get people interested in a problem, then you can actually learn everything associated with that. You don't need to take a course.
Yeah.
You're giving me a problem, I'll solve it. The problem solving will teach you. So anyway, that really went well. But even so, I was convinced that engineering is not for me. ये मेरा नहीं है, हो गया बस. उस समय तो लोग MBA करने लगे थे. कैट का एग्जाम दिया, अच्छा रैंक नहीं आया. अगेन फेलियर, भाई IIT IIM नहीं कर पाए. बट ऑफ कोर्स आई वाज नॉट टू डिसअपॉइंटेड, बिकॉज मुझे था कि मुझे बाहर जाना है. GMAT दिया, बहुत अच्छा स्कोर आ गया. तो बड़ा खुश हुआ कि चलो अब MBA करेंगे. MBA के लिए अप्लाई किया तो सब ने मना कर दिया कि एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है, बिकॉज द US स्कूल्स. एक स्कूल में हुआ नंबर 28 इन द रैंकिंग्स. माई सिस्टर वॉज इन द US, said, no way you are going to that school, you better do better than that. So anyway, मैं घूम फिर के, because I had done this programming course and I had done the project in programming, when Tata Burroughs was coming to recruit on campus, I fought very hard to be allowed to apply. अब ये सब भी है कि आप मेटा में हो तो आप कंप्यूटर साइंस जॉब्स के लिए नहीं अप्लाई कर सकते, वो कंप्यूटर साइंटिस्ट के लिए. एनीवे, किसी तरह आई गॉट इन, मुझे जॉब मिल गया.
Oh wow. Okay.
बिकॉज वो जो मैंने बीटेक प्रोजेक्ट किया था उसमें आई न्यू माई शिट, राइट. सो they offered me a job. I knew 2 languages. I had done more than 1,000 lines of code. I could show them the printouts. I could talk about recursive algorithms, all this. So it was very easy and I got the job. So I was very happy कि बॉस मेरी तो खुल गई किस्मत. मैं तो किंग ऑफ प्रशिया जा रहा हूँ. वहाँ पे मेरे सीनियर्स थे, उनको चमरी और अपार्टमेंट मिलता था, गाड़ी मिलती थी. वीकेंड्स में आप घूमो, पैसे कमाओ. US में वीज़ा का प्रोसेस शुरू किया. इस बीच में माई प्रोफेसर्स कॉल्ड मी, एंड दिस इज़ वेयर आई वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट हाउ अदर पीपल सी इन यू थिंग्स दैट यू डोंट रियलाइज, राइट. समटाइम्स यू रियली डू नीड अदर पीपल टू टेल यू. सो दीज 2 guys sat me down and they said कि what are you planning to do? So I said, मैं तो जा रहा हूँ. ये क्या कर रहे हो यार? You should study more. I said, really? Me study? Have you looked at my grades? So they said, no, you should really don't do this. I said, no, I've decided I'll work for a few years, do an MBA. I've got a good GMAT score, get into a good school. See, these are all these letters. They've said कि work experience लेके आ जाओ, we'll admit you. They said, no, you're making a big mistake. You should study more, and you'll regret it. You should do a master's at least. I said, are you joking, yaar? Metallurgical engineering. Fortunately, one of the guys had just come back with a PhD from UPenn in mechanical engineering. Now UPenn में Wharton है, तो I had always had this back of my mind कि Wharton में जाके पढ़ेंगे और GMAT स्कोर तो अच्छा है तो कुछ साल का. तो मैंने सोचा कि अगर ये मेरा UPenn में इंजीनियरिंग में हो जाता है तो शायद वहाँ घुस के मैं Wharton में चला जाऊँगा. उस समय 21 ईयर ओल्ड दिमाग लगता है कि कुछ भी पॉसिबल है. लोग बोलते हैं इंडियंस वहाँ जाके कुछ भी कर लेते हैं, तो आई थॉट कि कुछ हो जाएगा. तो आई टोल्ड सुंदरराजन दैट इफ यू कैन रेकमेंड मी टू पेन आई विल अप्लाई, बट आई डोंट वांट टू डू. वहाँ मेटलर्जी एनीवे नहीं था, तो मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग. उसने बोला हाँ बिल्कुल आया. इनफैक्ट ही ऑफर्ड, आई डिडंट आस्क हिम. ही सेड व्हाई डोंट यू अप्लाई टू पेन फॉर मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग. आई सेड तुम रेकमेंड कर दो, अगर हो जाएगा तो मैं चला जाऊँगा. श्योर इनफ वहाँ हो गया. अब आई वॉज लाइक बॉस,
टाटा भरोसा UPenn.
हाँ, तो एवरीबडी सेड नहीं पढ़ना अच्छा है एंड ऑल दैट. सो
And this is in mechanical.
दिस वाज मैकेनिकल, बट दे डिडंट गिव मी मनी, दे डिडंट गिव मी फंडिंग.
You have to pay for it.
Yes. Now in those days it was unheard of, and it was also a little bit of an insult to admit कि भाई IIT से तुम US जा रहे हो without a scholarship. And I knew that I would have gotten a scholarship easily. By then my grades had become better, and I think I had also applied to a few places just to feel them out, and they said हाँ you can come, scholarship ये वो. But I just didn't want to study metallurgical. मुझे कोई interest नहीं था. And that's also interesting. I think there's a stage in life where you start to come to terms with what you don't want to do.
Correct.
You may still not know what you want to do, but certainly you become clearer about what you don't want to do.
Correct.
So I think my sister, who was in the US, also supported me, and I have to tell you that my father really supported me. He said कि अगर तुम्हें जाना है तो you should do this. And अभी भी मेरे पास एक पर्ची है जिसमें how he, I didn't know this. I was very touched. Saw it after he passed away. A piece of paper where he has written down meticulously कि वो $5,000 का इंतजाम उन्होंने कहाँ से किया था, और उसमें से कहीं ज़मीन बेच के, कहीं FD चुरा के, और कहीं मेरे सिस्टर से, माई सिस्टर मस्ट हैव ऑफर्ड कि आई विल टेक केयर ऑफ दिस मच, तो उसको भी उन्होंने लोन ट्रीट करके और उसको रिटर्न कर कैसे करना है पूरा उन्होंने खाता एक रखा था अबाउट माई. सो फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर का फ़ी उन्होंने दिया और सेकंड सेमेस्टर का फ़ी मेरे सिस्टर ने दिया, और हम वहाँ पहुँचे. तो ये जो सुंदरराजन का गाइड था, PSI स्वामी, he blasted me. He said, "Are you an idiot? Why have you come here? This is a private university. These guys all, gouge students, and you are paying these expensive fees. What nonsense! Are you out of your mind? Nobody comes from India to Penn with no scholarship." I said, यार मैं क्या करूँ? मुझे तो लोगों ने कहा कि वहाँ जाके कुछ भी पॉसिबल है, हो जाएगा. मैंने सोचा बातचीत करके कर लेंगे. Anyway, now I'm here, I can't do it. So I started कि नहीं अपने पैसे बचाने हैं, खर्च नहीं करे. So for the first time I learned the value of, not that we led extravagant lives, but parents had supported so far. Now I started feeling really guilty कि बॉस इतना पैसा, और मुझे तो कंट्रीब्यूट करना चाहिए था, ये तो स्कॉलरशिप, वहाँ जाके और भी गिल्टी लगे. तो ऐसे चलो कोई बात नहीं, कुछ पैसे कमाते हैं. तो इट वॉज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. आई अप्लाइड फॉर ऑल पॉसिबल जॉब्स
On campus.
ऑन कैंपस. तो 20 घंटे अलाउड था और $3.50 पर आवर मिनिमम वेज था, वो मिलता था. तो आई हैड 4 जॉब्स. I loved my jobs and they taught me so much. The first job was कि पेन का जो म्यूज़िक फिल्म सोसाइटी था उसका मैं प्रोजेक्शनिस्ट था. तो आई यूज्ड टू गो एंड प्रोजेक्ट मूवीज़, मेरा ये काम था. उसके लिए मुझे पैसे मिलते थे. और सबसे अच्छी बात थी कि जो बाकी लोग थे उसमें से कोई PhD या ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट नहीं था, सब अंडरग्रेड थे जो पैसे कमाने के लिए करते थे. एक मैं ही इडियट था जो वो करता था. लेकिन I love movies. And दूसरा कि I could do odd hours. उन लोगों को तो अच्छा मूवीज़ होती थी फ्राइडे नाइट सैटरडे नाइट, जब सब लोग डेट्स पे जाते थे तो उनको वीकेंड्स के लिए कोई नहीं मिलता था दिखाने के लिए, और मैं हमेशा तैयार रहता बिकॉज मुझे तो पैसे कमाने थे। और वहाँ पे एक मूवी का 3, 4, 5 शो दिखाना होता था।
ओके।
तो लोग चट भी जाते थे मूवी दिखा दिखा के, और मैं वहाँ पे बैठ के अपनी असाइनमेंट्स करता था और मूवी चलता रहता था। तो एक तो ये था। दूसरा, डिपार्टमेंट में मुझे ग्रेडिंग मिल गई थी तो ग्रेडिंग करता था। तीसरा, एक वहाँ पे एननबर्ग सेंटर है, विच हैड अ ह्यूज ऑडिटोरियम। तो एननबर्ग सेंटर में दे यूज्ड टू हैव प्लेज, कॉन्सर्ट्स, तो उसमें मैं अशर बन गया था। तो लोगों को सीट में बिठाना, उनको डायरेक्ट करना, बाथरूम दिखाना, और साथ साथ प्ले और कॉन्सर्ट्स देखने को मिलते थे। एंड द फोर्थ वाज दैट फॉर द students who came from underprivileged backgrounds and who were on scholarship, they used to appoint tutors who would be available for specific subjects. So I was appointed as a chemistry tutor.
Oh wow, okay.
So these 4 jobs को manage करके every week I would earn $70 and I would make $280 in the month, which was a handsome sum because with that I had a very cheap apartment which I shared with 4 other Indians. I was able to pay for that and I was able to take care of my meals. So at least I was, in my mind, able to take care of my living expenses. Of course, it was nothing compared to the $5,000 per semester that my father and my sister were paying, but anyway, some satisfaction that I'm making about $1,000 through my own efforts. Interesting thing was that they also allowed me to do 4 courses instead of 3. They said, since you are paying, most students who are on scholarship do 3 courses and the 4th is treated as your TA or your RA. You can do 4 courses. So I could do 8 courses in that year. So now the interesting part of my journey begins. So, and the contrast. So I go to register for courses for the first semester. So there was this woman, Elaine, I still remember her. I said, can you help me which courses I should take? She said, what do you mean? You can choose whatever you want. I said, but there must be some requirement. She said, yeah, you have to do a course in math, a course in applied elasticity, and you have to do your master's thesis. Other than that, you can choose whatever you want. So I said, but this is a mechanical engineering master's, and I don't have a mechanical engineering degree. So there must be some more mechanical engineering courses that I have to do. So she said, yeah, pretty much these are what the requirements are. The rest you can do what you want. So I said, but how does it work? I can take courses anywhere in the university. She said, yeah, pretty much. So I thought I was asking very intelligent questions. I said, what about the medical school? Can I take a course in the medical school? She said, yeah, you can. Then I thought, now I'll put the zinger question. Can I take courses in the Wharton school? She said, yeah, but it is a little tough because they give first priority to MBA students and they have caps in the class. So you can go talk to the professor, and if the professor allows you, either because he has capacity in the class or because he gives you permission, yes, you can take courses in the Wharton school. I said, boss, ये तो मतलब
जुगाड़ लिया आपने,
जुगाड़ मिल गया. फिर I started going through the courses. तो मैंने सोचा like a true Indian कि भाई मैं पैसे दे रहा हूँ तो जो required है वो कर लो. तो मैंने मैथ और अप्लाइड इलास्टिसिटी पहले सेमेस्टर में ख़त्म कर लो इसको. 2 बचे. 2 बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग कोर्सेज दिखे. इंट्रोडक्शन टू रोबोटिक्स, इंट्रोडक्शन टू कंप्यूटर विजन.
ओके.
दोनों ले लिया. कुछ मालूम नहीं था दोनों के बारे में, बट इंटरेस्टिंग था. एंड आई हैड अ ब्लास्ट. द इंट्रोडक्शन टू कंप्यूटर विजन was being taught by this woman called Rujina Baichi.
Okay.
She was the head of the computer science department. I found her very inspiring. I loved robotics. And that's when I decided कि boss, मुझे तो robotics करना है और robotics vision same kind of thing, और मुझे इस लेडी के साथ PhD करना चाहिए.
Really?
हाँ.
2 कोर्सेज में.
वो तो एक कोर्स पढ़ा रही थी
हाँ.
और ये दूसरा कोर्स. आई सेड कि बॉस यही मुझे करना है. बाय देन व्हाट हैड हैपेंड वाज कि हाँ मैं और भी पैसे कमा रहा था. पार्ट ऑफ दैट थिंग वाज एक एडवर्टाइजमेंट देखा मैंने पेपर में कि एक वॉर्टन का प्रोफेसर है, उसको कुछ प्रोग्रामिंग हेल्प चाहिए. तो अरविंद रंगास्वामी इंडियन था, पहुंचा मैं वहाँ, उसको मैंने बोला कि मैं तो IIT से हूँ, मुझे तो प्रोग्रामिंग आता है. वो बड़ा खुश, उसने मुझे मार्केटिंग डेटा दी करने को. तो मैं वॉर्टन जाता था, तो वॉर्टन स्कूल में भी मैं जाता था, वहाँ मुझे एक कैबिन भी मिला हुआ था, तो आई वॉज वेरी हैप्पी. बट देन आई रियलाइज कि यार ये मैनेजमेंट का स्टफ बहुत फ्लिमजी सा है और यहाँ पे तो मैं एकदम सॉलिड काम कर रहा हूँ और सीख रहा हूँ. तो एंड दैट्स व्हेन दिस होल थिंग स्टार्ट टू हैपन कि नहीं यहाँ पे तो PhD करना चाहिए, लेकिन PhD के लिए पैसे चाहिए, ये वो. एनीवे सेमेस्टर खत्म हुआ. आई गेट अ लेटर फ्रॉम माई, उस समय तो लेटर्स आते थे मेल बॉक्स में, फ्रॉम द ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट्स, ग्रेजुएट प्रोग्राम्स हेड नॉम लेयर करके था, प्लीज कम एंड सी मी. क्या हुआ, गया मैंने. He said that I'm very deeply apologetic. I said, क्या हो गया? He said that, you know what, we didn't give you a scholarship, but you have outperformed all your classmates. You've got 4 A's. मैंने कभी सोचा नहीं था कि मुझे suddenly how did I become intelligent? So लोग तो बोलते हैं कि यार अमेरिका में easy है, तो I thought कि यार पेन इज नॉट अ टॉप स्कूल, तो मेरी तो एवरेज इंटेलिजेंस है, मैंने अच्छा किया होगा. बट एनीवे आई सेड कि बट अब he said but I'm so also again I have to deeply apologize because we don't have funds, so I just wanted to let you know that we made a mistake, we should have supported you, but this often happens, I'll see what I can do. Good news is that week later he called me and he said one of the students who was in the program who was on a full scholarship has withdrawn. He's transferring to, उसका कहीं MIT या कहीं हो गया, तो वो वहाँ चला गया, उसका पैसा बच गया. Then I got my funding.
Oh wow.
And for the rest of my Penn tenure, I was fully funded.
Beautiful.
So this is the other lesson I learned. This is not about boasting about myself, but it was creating the environment where suddenly there was a boom match. Correct. Between who you are, what you want to be, what you value, and what was on offer.
Correct.
Then magic happened. This same person was completely demoralized, who's thinking कि मेरा rank तो 994 है, मेरे तो GPA 4.8 है, मैं तो इंटेलिजेंट हो ही नहीं सकता, मेरे सारे फ्रेंड्स बहुत स्मार्ट हैं. यहाँ पे सडनली वही बंदा, और वहाँ भी आके ये सोच रहा है कि यार थोड़ी इजी जगह है इसलिए अच्छा हो गया, चलो कोई बात नहीं. बट यू नो व्हाट, आई हैड, if I can say this at the risk of sounding a bit pretentious, I had a great run, because then for 2 years I followed this lady around, and then I discovered another thing, that I really, if I had to pursue something, I could do it. So I started following this lady around. I said कि आप मुझे अपना स्टूडेंट बना लो. वो बोले कि नहीं यार, तुम मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग में, कंप्यूटर साइंस में तुम कैसे करोगे PhD मेरे अंडर, और तुम जानते नहीं हो, you don't appreciate it, but if you work under me, you apply for a PhD in computer science, you'll have to do all these courses in computer science now, and don't do it. Just get your PhD. There's so many people in mechanical engineering, you can get that. I said, no, I want to work with you. Kept pursuing her. Often joke that I haven't pursued a woman more than I pursued her. Anyway, one fine day, I still remember, these are some of the manners and values you're taught. One fine day, it was summertime, I was walking, she was coming out of the door, she's carrying a bunch of books, she couldn't open the door, so I opened the door for her. I said, can I help you with these books? Took some of her books, she came to the car, she sat down, I helped her with the books. She said, aren't you the Indian guy who keeps asking me to work for me?
Yeah.
Because she didn't even remember my name, right? So many students must be coming to her. I said, yeah, the same guy. What are you planning to do? I said, listen, I'm trying to finish my master's. I thought you wanted to do a PhD. I said, listen, I told you, if I do a PhD, I'm going to do it under you, otherwise I'm not doing it. She said, okay, why don't you come see me on Monday?
Oh, really? Okay.
I went there. She said, I have a project from the United States Postal Service. I must warn you, it has nothing to do with mechanical engineering. is a pure computer vision project, but I need somebody to work on this in the summer. So if you're interested, you can do it. And then we can talk about how we make the PhD happen. I said, I'm signed up. Started working on this vision project. Then after a few weeks, she said, no, I think let's go talk to your department chair. See the student centricity, right? She's a very senior professor, head of the computer science department. She said, let's go talk to your chair. I go to the same guy. She says, this guy wants to do a PhD. I've never had a mechanical engineering student, but I'm happy to take him on. You need to tell me what it'll take to make it happen. He said, I don't know, but maybe what we can do is we can put a few people from our department onto your committee, and that'll be okay. Got done.
Oh.
So I have a PhD in mechanical engineering under somebody
in computer science.
Who's computer scientist. I worked in a computer science lab, and I have a PhD in robotics. You can check out my publications. I was published in the International Journal of Robotics Research, in the IEEE Transactions on Robotics and Automation. I have a decent academic record of publications. In fact, my papers are still cited if you go and check on Google Scholar. Fortunately, one of my friends, very close friends and relatives, worked at McKinsey. And this is Jayant Sinha, who also you must know from McKinsey, who went on to become minister and politician. Jayant's wife was doing her PhD at Wharton while I was doing my PhD. Jayant and I are related, but we are more contemporaries and friends. So his wife Punita, who went on to become a big investment banker and a finance professional at Blackstone, and now has her own fund. She's also a Kathak dancer.
Okay.
So she came to dance in Canada while I was there for some maybe the World Bengali Conference or something like that. So I was driving her, dressed in her Kathak regalia, and she said, why don't you apply to McKinsey? I said, you've got to be joking, right? And why would McKinsey take me? And she said, no, Jayant के team में एक MIT का PhD in nuclear physics है. So I was like, but वो MIT का है, मैं तो Penn का हूँ. So, and of course, you know how tough it is to get into McKinsey, and so friends and relatives never tell you to apply because they are always afraid कि भैया नहीं होगा तो मुझे ही. तो जयंत भी था वहाँ पे. He didn't say anything. He was quiet. And a few days later, he said that, you know what, I think Punita was right. You should think about it. McKinsey has this diversified recruiting program to diversify and to hire non-MBAs. So we were called non-MBAs.
PhDs but non-MBAs.
Non-MBAs. And I'm going to get a $500 award for referral if you make it, which I can donate to my favorite charity.
Okay.
So it will be fun. तुम apply कर दो. Imagine you're taking such a big career decision, but you're saying $500 की charity के लिए. So I applied, not really knowing what it would be.
Which office was this?
In Toronto. So you first applied to an office, and they said there's a North America pool, you could go anywhere. So I applied in the Toronto office, and I was like, Canada, और यहाँ से मुझे निकलना है. Let's go back to the US. All my friends are there, my relatives are there. करते हैं.
Your sisters are also there by then.
Sisters there. So I go into the Toronto office and I loved it because everybody I was meeting was a non-MBA. तो होता क्या था कि the Toronto office was the garh of all the people from around the world who had done interesting degrees
and showed up there.
So it had the best collection of Rhodes Scholars, for example.
Oh, wow, okay.
Best number of Rhodes Scholars. So Dominic Barton was there, who went on to become head of McKinsey globally.
Which year was this?
Early this 90s. Is 1992, 93. Right? So anyway, I met the people in the office, and I still remember that with us in those times, they were trying to get us in. So they told us ki, don't worry, we won't ask you business questions and so on. But I was very anxious, so I told Jayant कि यार मुझे business के बारे में कुछ नहीं आता. So can you please help me with some books? So I remember Jayant recommended some books. He recommended a book called The Machine That Changed the World. It was a story of Toyota. So I read that book cover to cover, and I'm now getting armed about business concepts. Then Robert Reich, who went on to become the US Secretary of whatever Treasury, had written a book, The Wealth of Nations. So I read that. I also prepared, I still have those handwritten notes of why management consulting, why McKinsey, where do you want to be in 5 years, where do you want to be in 10 years, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. आज भी मैं लोगों को यही सब ज्ञान देता हूँ कि अगर इंटरव्यू के लिए प्रिपेयर करना है तो 4-5 क्वेश्चंस अच्छे से लिख के ले जाओ. You can weave them into whatever answer, right? But the point is that you've thought it through. Right? Anyway, so when I went to the Toronto office, my first interview, I still remember the guy, Richard Krasnoff, big bearded guy like you, sitting there. उस समय तो लोगों को beard भी allowed नहीं था, but उसका beard था. He says कि, so you're the CEO of Air Canada, and Canadian Airlines is available for an acquisition. Will you do it? मैं बोला भैया तुमने कहा कि बिजनेस का केस नहीं पूछोगे, यहाँ तो सीधा स्टार्ट ही हो गया. ये मैं कैसे करूँ?
Complicated question.
हाँ. So I was like, but they were very helpful in the interview. So I still remember कि बहुत कुछ बात हो गई कि if you start talking about it कि planes consolidate कर सकते हैं, routes consolidate कर सकते हैं. I was like down to the level of कि same baggage handlers में saving हो सकता है. मतलब I was trying my best. And then he said कि, and what else? I was like, shit man, there is some answer he's looking for and I'm not able to get to it. So he said that can any two airlines merge? I said, I don't know. I guess so.
The premise assumed it, right?
Huh. Who do you need to check with anybody? I still remember he said. मैं सर खुजा रहा हूँ कि किससे चेक करना. Shareholders, I don't know what shareholders are. I said, owners, who else do you want to check with? Then he said something about, suppose Air India wanted to merge with Air Canada, who do you think they need to check with? I said, the government. He said, that's right, you have to go to the regulator. So I loved these interviews, and people were not trying to show you that you were dumb. They were trying to help you think it through. So I loved it, and then I realized कि यार अगर काम करना है तो इसी ऑफिस में करना. This resembles my lab. कोई साउथ अफ्रीका से है, डोमिनिक भी साउथ अफ्रीका से.
Dominic was a young partner by then, or
no, he was an SCM. He was not even an SC. He was an EM.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it spawned really great people. Sanyan Se, who's become a mentor and a close friend, he became the chairman of Asia. Stephen Baer, who became the head of Korea.
Yeah.
So amazing office. I mean, my whole grounding in values and business values, not integrity, honesty, right? Really commitment to people and what the firm was. I can talk more about that. It was amazing. I mean, it completely shaped my life.
How long were you in the Toronto office?
Cumulatively about a 4-5 year period.
Okay.
But very formative years because, that was the impressionable age if you think about my induction into business. Right?
Correct.
I really didn't know. I did not understand time value of money. I was 29 years old. Did not understand. I had never heard the word cash flow. I had not heard time value of money. I did not know NPV. I had no idea. I used to think advertising was marketing. Very basic. Totally. So anyway, I went through 9 interviews, 3 rounds. The good news was that after the first round, the Toronto guys said कि ठीक है तुम्हें हम न्यूयॉर्क भेज रहे हैं, but अगर ये process workout करता है तो we'd like you to work here.
Okay.
Even then I was like, everybody would tell me, all Jayant and everybody say, nahi, US is the center for you, please come back here.
And Jayant was based out of the New York.
Jayant was in Boston.
Boston.
But then the more I met the Toronto guys, the more I liked them. So ultimately it worked out. I got the offer. I decided to join there.
Oh, wow.
And the day I came into the office, McKinsey had a magazine called Month by Month.
Okay.
It used to come out. Uske cover pe, there was that hand painted map of India. और अंदर में टीनो पुरी का फोटो, रंजीत पंडित का फोटो, ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट, ब्लरी, पोर्ट्रेट फोटोज. नहीं, this was the magazine for McKinsey.
Oh, okay.
Which was published that month, and that month was the India story.
Oh,
we
wow.
Just opened an office in India.
Okay.
By chance. And अंदर में pictures of the first batch. You know, Rajat Gupta, Vipul Tuli, Shankar Krishnan, you know, all these guys.
Oh, wow.
In that. I think the big thing I learned, which has not changed, which left a deep impression on me, was just the work ethic, which I think is quite common, but the deep commitment to people at that time and the close bonding that happened has really stayed with me because of that deep commitment to people. We were really committed to each other. And I mean, just for example, one of my colleagues, Kathleen McLaughlin, who was my first JEM, is today the head of the Walmart Foundation.
Oh, wow.
She's coming to India in 10 days and with her husband, and I'm taking her around. We've remained in touch all these years, right?
30 plus years.
30 plus years, and honestly just 4 years actually in Toronto, if you think about it, right? But I'm so excited. Like, I mean, I've not been excited so much about hosting anyone at home as I'm excited about her coming with her husband. So that was one aspect of it, but amazing lessons. I'll tell you my first study. I remember my senior partner, Brian Schofield, director, much older, white haired, already probably 25 years in the firm, used to smoke a lot. I was working with Spar Aerospace, which was a private sector equivalent of ISRO, right? Which is kind of launching satellites for Canada. They had made the Canada arm that used to sit on the top of the space shuttle. So with my PhD in robotics, you know, the team thought कि McKinsey team की credibility बढ़ेगी. हम बोलेंगे कि actually rocket scientist ले आए हैं हम लोग. That team used to joke with me. तो मुझे बोला गया to figure out कि उनके satellites और Russian rockets को combine करके is there a market proposition? Their scientists, their guys were very keen to do it. McKinsey was asked to evaluate that project. If you actually think about it, on one hand, it was very exciting for me because this is a real, I knew something about robots and robotics. But equally, I had no idea of. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that I was put through a 4-week boot camp called a mini MBA. And I learned a lot of stuff that all I needed to really get off. Interesting, just slide anecdote.
This is what the BAs go through now, right? To like kind of go
possibly
1 week mini MBA before they go to clients. Yeah.
Now
it's a great program, by the way.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was, it was still early days. So during my program, I noticed, and this is where sort of how the initiative taking is rewarded, both in North America and, you know, while I was going through the program, there were a number of people who came from liberal arts backgrounds. Now, they couldn't understand simple Excel right? So I suggested to them that we should have a couple of days before that to just reorient these, to just give some training to these people before you put them into the program because they would benefit more. They said, good idea, tum karo. So one other guy in my class and I came up with this idea of a quantitative and computer skills program, QCS.
Okay.
So QCS was for एक तो non-MBA but non-technical guys to come 2-3 days before. The QCS program became very popular because and then it would have all these interesting people. It would have all these Rhodes scholars and so on who had come from liberal arts background who didn't know any math and so on.
So very smart.
But very smart. So I became lead faculty, 2 of us. And you know who was in one of our QCS programs? Bob Sternfeld's current global managing director of McKinsey.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Was he not in the Toronto office or no?
No, he is not Toronto. He was always California or San Francisco, but he also came from a similar non-technical, non-management background.
It's amazing the more you talk about how many points in your life have been about completely reformative educational moments, from at McKinsey to your sisters getting educated, to your IIT Kanpur story, to the PhD guy that you kind of forced your way into her program, but then made sure that happened, and then now at McKinsey. Like,
yeah, I never thought about it.
Have you thought about that?
No, I haven't. It's interesting you say that. Maybe, probably there's something to it.
Yeah.
But going back, I was back to, so Brian Scofield one day सिगरेट फूंकते हुए टीम रूम में घुसता है, कोई नहीं था, अकेले में, अरे मेरी तो बॉस, ये सीनियर बॉस आ गया, क्या करूं?
तब डायरेक्टर थे
वो डायरेक्टर
एमेरिटस,
हाँ, मतलब नॉट येट बट डायरेक्टर आ गए रूम में और सो पेसिंग अप एंड डाउन, मैं अपना कुछ काम कर रहा हूँ कि भैया मुझसे कुछ मत पूछना. He suddenly says कि so Pramath, what do you think? Should we partner with the Russians? I said, but Brian, I don't know. I'm still doing the analysis. I'm waiting for this data to come in. I'm not sure. Maybe this, these guys are saying, Pramath, should we partner with the Russians? मेरी तो मतलब, I was like, shit, man, I don't know what the answer is. He's asking me for the answer. What do I say? I don't know. The best coaching lesson I've learned, right? लोग बोलते हैं ना कि elevator pitch and all that. उसने एक moment में मुझे elevator pitch समझा दिया. Kept pushing me and I was feeling a little bit कि भैया मैं अभी आया हूँ यार, मुझे business के बारे में कुछ नहीं मालूम, तो मुझे push कर रहे हो. Pramath, what does your gut tell you? ऐसे ही बोल रहा था, ऐसे मैं ऐसे तुमसे कर रहा हूँ, looking me straight in the eye. What does your gut tell you? You know enough. If you had to take a call today based on what you know, would you partner with the Russians? Pramath, take a call. I said, no. Why? बॉस, मैं अभी तो वही बोल रहा हूँ कि मुझे why नहीं मालूम, तुम मुझे push क्यों कर रहे हो? Why? Think about it. Why? So I said, I don't think I trust them. He said, Pramath, is it because of the general reputation of the Russians? Or have you found out something else? So I said, no. I mean, I was immediately conscious that I'm not against Russians. So I said, but why? So I said, there isn't enough data available. I'm not able to figure out if I can rely on the data. Notice that I'm not yet going into the typical numbers, cost structure, right? This is the masterful, through me, he's getting his answer actually, right? Wow. He probably is going to see the CEO next, right? And sure enough, as I did the work, you won't believe it. At the end of the study, what I found was that the reason this wouldn't work is because the economics were not as compelling, and they were not as compelling because of the costs of ensuring the launch.
Wow.
Which were so high because the failure rates of Russian rocket launchers was so high that you would have to actually you have to actually pay much more premium to ensure those launches, which negated the seeming advantage of the lower cost of the
Wow.
right? And you know where I got the data from? There was an amateur ham radio guy in Washington, D.C., who used to listen to ham radio operators around the world, including these Russian guys who would track satellite launches. And he had kept a detailed diary of all launches around the world that were happening, including failures and crashes.
And how
and
did you find
explosions.
this guy, this ham radio guy?
Actually, Toronto RNI found this guy.
Oh,
To
really?
be honest, हमारा जो research and information हम लोग बोलते थे, एक मैगजीन आता था about satellites. उसके पीछे में उसका classified ad था.
हाँ.
You want data on satellite launches? Reach out to me.
Wow.
और उन दिनों में ईमेल शुरू हो गया था, बट ज़्यादा कोई फ़ोन पे होता था. So this woman, I remember, called him up. I didn't even call him. She got me the data. And from the data, it was pretty damning. By the way, the story doesn't end there. Next big lesson. So I'm now convinced कि boss ये तो काम नहीं करता. Even with my lack of business knowledge, I could show very categorically कि boss ये तो ain't gonna happen. Now this team that had proposed this whole project for the CEO was up in arms.
कि हमने प्रपोज किया, McKinsey आके बोल रहा है कि नहीं हो सकता.
तुम तो देखे ही हो, ये सब बहुत बार होता था. Guy goes to the CEO and says McKinsey has no clue what they're talking about. They put this greenhorn who's a PhD, all right, but he has no experience in satellites or business. This is his first assignment. And they are relying on his analysis to say that we should kill this project. Second, this guy is biased. Third, his analysis is faulty. And blah, blah, blah. By the way, it was a letter. CEO calls Nigel Etherington, my EM, gives him that letter, says, this is what they have written about your associate. You tell me what to do. Nigel Etherington comes to me, shows me that letter. I'm again in like first study in a firm that says client first, client first, client first. Up to my client is angry with me. Now what happens to me? Will they throw me out? Did I screw up? How should I have done it differently? All this. Nigel says, no, I think your analysis is sound. So I said, then Nigel, why? He said, no, you have to go talk to the client. I said, but Nigel, he's angry with me, right? I mean, you want me to talk to the client? You know, shouldn't you be doing this? He said, no, this is your problem. I said, how does it become my problem? It's your problem. You are my manager. This is McKinsey. It's the firm's problem. He said, yeah, it is the firm's problem. You are representing the firm and it's your problem. You have to solve it, Pramath. I said, how do I solve it? He said, like you solve any problem. There's a conflict. You go solve for the conflict. I said, यार, this is so unfair. मैं नया associate हूँ. वो मुझसे गुस्सा है, गाली दे रहा है, complain कर रहा है. I thought I was going to be fired. Fire ही कर दो यार, but going and talking to this guy is so difficult. He said, no, Pramath, you have to learn how to deal with these things. You must go and talk to him directly. So, and I hate conflict. All of us do, actually. So I show up, meet this guy. This is deep in the heart of French Canada. These guys didn't even talk in proper English. They refused to talk to you in English. Canteen में अगर अंग्रेजी में बोलो तो खाना नहीं देते थे. So anyway, this guy basically launched into me. He gave me right, left and center. Finally, he kind of calmed down. And I don't know, I think this is another thing I've learned. Ki usually behind the story, there's another story.
Correct. It's always between the lines. Always.
Yeah. So in my own sort of way, I asked him, boss, why are you so angry? I'm happy to be disproven, but मुझे तो यही मिला यार. I'm not against you, right? So why are you so angry? What's going on? Then my whole discussion changed, and it turned out that this guy was on the verge of retirement. He was a few years away. Funnily enough, as I tell the story, he was probably about my age. He was looking at a retirement in a few years. And he was really insecure that because if this project didn't happen, that he would be asked to leave. There would be no role for him. So that was really making him fight.
It was a relevance issue.
Huh?
It was his relevance issue.
Total relevance, total insecurity and wanting to stay on somehow. I said, boss, if that is the problem, I said, what is the problem? I'll go talk to this. I said, ये तो बड़ा easy problem है यार, इसको क्यों लड़ रहे हो तुम? We'll go talk to the CEO and we'll tell him that we need to find a role for you. That's the problem has to be solved, right? And I don't remember now what happened, but then I went to Nigel. I was very impressed with myself. I was actually very impressed with Nigel that he forced me to do it. So these are some of the lessons that I learned in those days that I feel like completely changed my view of things. The other quick thing that I want to talk about is the importance of feedback and the commitment to me as a person. You know, ultimately, I learned how you make others successful.
Yeah.
That was true for what had happened with me with Sundarajan saying, go to Penn.
PhD karo, haan.
That was true when Baichi said, come, I'll go talk to you. But I hadn't quite understood that followership and leadership is really about making others successful. What does it mean to say that, right? That I really rediscovered when I was at McKinsey. Now, the same Brian Schofield guy, he liked me a lot after this study. So, uska ek kuch organizational work tha with the board. He said, I want Pramath to work with me directly. We don't need a team. Again, I was really scared कि भैया मुझे लगा दिया इसके साथ में organization के बारे में मुझे कुछ मालूम ही नहीं है. But I started working directly with him. I did some work. This guy leaves me a voicemail. I still have the transcript of that voicemail saying, you did a good job and here's why you did a good job. You know, people give negative feedback, but his feedback was positive, but with reasons why. It was huge for my confidence. But I remember this guy had a convertible Mercedes-Benz and we used to drive to the client. It was a nice day. Hood was down. We were driving. He was shouting at the top of his voice. He was saying, so Pramath, and he had this quality, right? So he says, Pramath, what do you want to do in life? I like, yaar, client meeting ke liye ja rahe hain, chhod de yaar. What do you want to do? I don't know, Brian. I'm confused. You know how you are at that age. No, what do you want to do in life? Come, tell me, what do you want to do in life? What do you want to do in life? Right? Kept badgering me. I was getting irritated. Then finally, I said, I want to go work in India. And this is my second study. I'm 3 months into the firm.
Oh, really? That early on? How?
So he said, oh, right. Why do you want to go work in? His next question would always be why, right? So we got into the discussion. I must have said, my parents, I love India. This, that. So few days later, I'm in the office. The staffing person says, Pramath, when do you finish your study and could you finish this earlier? No, this was actually the next study that I'm working on. This conversation happened somewhere. Next study I'm working on. When do you finish? I said, अभी तो मेरा 1-2 हफ्ता बचा हुआ है इसमें. She says कि is it okay if I talk to them to see if they can release you early? I said, why do you want to do that? You know, I'm doing some important stuff for the team and so on. She said, no, we have this study in India. We have this study where somebody needs to go to India to do a market study and the team is very keen to get started. So I thought if you could do it, that would be great. I said, wow, this is great. I could go to India. But I said, but I have to still finish the study and so on. So thoda sa awkwardness ho gaya tha. My team was like, why does he have to go and so on. You know, people are like that, territorial about. So in the course of all this, I said to Leslie, that, you know, why did you pick me? Just because I'm Indian? She said, but I thought you wanted to go to India. So I said, how do you know?
Brian told.
She said, Brian told me. There's a staffing meeting when this came up. He said, no, just ask Pramath. If he can go, send him. उस समय का कैजुअल कॉन्वर्सेशन जो कि मैं रिजेंट कर रहा हूँ उसको याद है और वो महीनों बाद इतना बड़ा आदमी महीनों बाद बोल रहा है कि वो 60-65 लोगों का ऑफिस था, उसमें ही वाज लाइक द नंबर वन तो रॉन फार्मर था, बट ही वाज हिज कंटेम्पररी. उसको याद है कि एक
Indian
रीसेंट
associate.
एसोसिएट इंडिया जाना चाहिए, उसका एम्बिशन है इंडिया जाने का, राइट. सो ऑफन आई टेल पीपल कि तुम्हें जो चाहिए बोल दो, कि कोई ठिकाना नहीं कौन कहाँ कब सुन के तुम्हें कर देगा तुम्हारी.
Correct. A lot of people in the office talk to me, ki, why do you talk about McKinsey so much and why is it so? You're just there for 5 years and this and that. And for me, it was the first place I worked professionally. And I found people who have backed me every time I needed it after I have left. While I was there, for sure.
Absolutely.
After I have left.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of the professional molding that I have, whatever little it is because the firm was genuinely invested in my success.
Totally.
So people think BarberShop is like this McKinsey propaganda to market. I like it's not. I genuinely am a fan of the firm, as are almost anyone who has worked there for some amount of time and found solace in the mentorship that they got.
I mean, one of the people in the Toronto office who was really iconic and very, somebody people looked up to but were also fearful was Sunyan Say, whose name you may have heard. Went on to become chairman of Asia. I worked with him and...
This is before Gordon, or is it?
Before Gordon. Chairman of South Asia. I don't know what the...
Okay. But maybe Dom was also there. Gordon or was it Dom, Gordon or Kevin?
Dom ke bhi pehle tha.
Dom ke pehle tha. Okay.
Or maybe he was just Singapore. But he was really feared. But some of the Indian traits in you help, right? So I could see कि ये बंदा ठीक है, थोड़ा सा awkward है, but good guy. So I used to work with him. I used to enjoy working with him.
Was he Indian?
No, he's Singapore.
Sunyan Say.
Sunyan Say, HSIEH.
Okay.
Chinese Singaporean. I remember once my client, Abby TV Prize का जो CEO था, उसने कुछ बोल दिया कि this guy is Indian and, does he really know our market? He said, we won't serve you. उन दिनों 35 years ago, he said, we won't serve you. It became a huge thing in the office, in the CST. अरे इतना बड़ा client उसको बोल दिया. Ron said, no, he can't make comments like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So anyway, I worked with Sunyan a lot. He was very disappointed that I left. I was just telling Tino Puri, who was in Dubai, that when I was coming to India, that was that study when I was sent. So Sunyan said, Tino Puri, you have to meet. He's been absolutely outstanding. He shaped my career, this, that. And sure enough, I walk into the Oberoi in Bombay and I see Tino coming down the lift. And in those days, he was God. And I told him that, I'm here from Canada. Sunyan, Canada? Why are you in Canada? You should be in India. This is what I aspire, there was a pride and sort of emotion about the country. So that was always there. And so, of course, I was now here, just fast forwarding. So Rajat was that year getting the Distinguished Alumnus Award at IIT Delhi. And his professor, V.S. Raju, was actually now the director. And he said that Kharagpur has the Vinod Gupta School and IIT Bombay had Shailesh Mehta School. IIT Delhi needs a school of management. You're on the board of trustees for a couple of these, Harvard and Chicago. Who else but you to give back? That's how this project was born. It was supposed to be at IIT Delhi.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I must confess to you, and no shame, I'm a big copy paster. You don't have to reinvent everything. So that day when we were talking, the idea came up कि यार meeting है कुछ, can you try to give me some masala, put some things together. So मेरे पास एक document था, building the leading multimedia university in Asia. मेरे एप्पल कंप्यूटर पे वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट था, उसको मैंने इमीडिएटली चेंज किया, बिल्डिंग एशियाज बेस्ट बिजनेस स्कूल इन इंडिया.
ओह रियली?
और उसका टिपिकल बिजनेस प्लान स्ट्रक्चर था, विजन, strategy, programs, partnerships, organization, resources, financials, implementation plan. उसका मैंने जो मटेरियल था निकाल के उसमें आई स्टार्टेड राइटिंग कि बिजनेस स्कूल कैसे बनेगा इंडिया का
दिल्ली में.
मैंने ये रियलाइज किया था मलेशिया में कि अगर क्लीन स्टार्ट नहीं करो और बंच ऑफ यूनिवर्सिटीज को साथ लगा के बनाना शुरू करो तो कभी वर्ल्ड क्लास नहीं बनेगा. बिकॉज एक बार जब क्वालिटी बन जाती है तो उसको इम्प्रूव करना मुश्किल होता है. एंड आई हैव सेड दिस ऑन मेनी टाइम्स कि क्वालिटी डजंट स्केल, सर्टेनली नॉट इन एजुकेशन. तो मलेशिया में क्या हुआ था कि दे फोर्स्ड अस टू पुट अ बंच ऑफ कॉलेजेस टुगेदर एंड आई डिड नॉट हैव द फोरसाइट टू पुश बैक.
Correct.
To say I would rather start from scratch. Let's hire some of those faculty members and bring them here, create something from scratch, new culture and so on. And by then when I had also learned that in McKinsey this change management and transformation was overblown.
Yeah.
It's much easier to start a new unit,
Correct.
make it hugely successful and then maybe try and transform the rest of it because of this new unit. But don't try to make, if you try to make it, yeah, some people are successful, turnaround artists and all that. But yeah, turnaround you can do, but can you really build something excellent from something that is not so? Maybe there are areas where you can do it, but education to impossible. So that lesson was very deeply ingrained in me. And of course, Rajat and others, because they were involved, they also wanted to build something that was truly high quality. So that led to a lot of innovation in the way ISB happened. And in fact, the ISB lessons are still true in everything I do. Because we got 5 years to crack the problem.
You started in 97.
95 I was doing Malaysia. End of 95 we had already started working on it and didn't start till 2001.
Yes, this is a McKinsey study commissioned by the
Yes.
AP government.
No, nothing to do with the government. It was a pro bono McKinsey study started by Rajat Gupta because his alma mater was looking for some help.
And then how did you guys tell the ID Delhi guys कि अभी ये नहीं करना है, हम कहीं और कर रहे हैं?
नहीं तो 2 years into it, when it became very apparent कि reservations नहीं कर सकते, faculty को global salaries देनी होंगी, 1 year program करना है, semester system नहीं follow करना है. Suddenly it became apparent that if you really wanted to get it right, there was so many things that you had to break away from that the IIT system just would not allow you to.
And so it became a private. So who funded the setup of the private? How did you guys get like?
No, so by then what had happened was that McKinsey and Rajat had already involved a number of Indian corporates and CEOs into the board. So
Mukesh Bhai,
Anil Ambani, Adi Godrej, Yogi Deveshwar, Hindustan Lever, Keki Dadi Seth, bunch of other folks, Analjeet Singh, Sunil Muljal, Rajendra Pawar. I mean, these people may have come later. Anand Mahindra was there at that time for a bit. Ratan Tata was there. We had approached Kumar Birla.
It was all on Rajat's this thing, is it?
McKinsey and Rajat really, I think really pulled it together. There was such high respect for him.
And why were they doing it why was Rajat doing that? What was the firm's incentive in building like this private business school with Indian conglomerates?
I don't know. I think he just wanted to give back. He wanted to do something for India, and he thought that it would be great for our reputation building and the firm's reputation building efforts. I think it was never done before. It's rarely been done. I mean, the only other example is PHFI, but it still stands out as a great example.
Amazing, because this coincides with the latter part of his managing partnership tenure from 97 to, he was from 94 to 2001, right? So building out this thing in India while being the global managing partner out of the US or wherever he was.
Yeah.
Must have been hard for him.
Yeah, but we did it here, no? Because we were here. Yeah, it was very
But there was a full India team and all of that.
Yeah, there was.
But he was involved fully.
He was fully involved, and Anil Kumar was also involved. But there was always an India team, and I got involved early on. Then I went back to Toronto, but while I was in Toronto, by then the partnership with Kellogg and Wharton had happened. Had been inked. So I worked a lot with the Kellogg and Wharton folks.
So full circle back to Wharton for you.
Oh yeah, Wharton and Penn I have worked a lot with.
Wow.
In fact, the full circle was that the moment I got recruited into McKinsey, I was immediately put on the Wharton recruiting team. And I was like laughing to myself, कि boss, मैं अब वहाँ recruit करने जा रहा हूँ.
जहाँ मेरे को जाना था इतने.
And I used to get such perverse pleasure because when you go there, I was a poor student.
Yeah.
And now when you go to do the cell dinners at Wharton, you'd go to the toniest of Philadelphia restaurants. And we would get to wine and dine in these places. I used to get such perverse pleasure. Here in this city, I was a poor student and now I'm eating in...
You were an usher and you were a... Wow. Doing 4 jobs for that $5,000.
Correct.
And
now you are actually, not to sound too elitist, but it was a real interesting... So anyway, I don't know, because my affiliation would serve up UPenn, I would always get staffed on the Wharton recruiting team. So, the way the firm works in North America is that you get all the Wharton guys to go
recruit, yeah.
And then I became a partner of Wharton with ISB happening. So those few months that I was back in North America, I actually tried to further the idea of the ISB and a lot of the curriculum development and so on. I would go to Kellogg, I would go to Wharton. Then when I came back, then I became a permanent fixture, right? Because then I got heavily into it. I anchored all the teams.
And you left McKinsey to do this, right? Or
No, I never.
Seconded.
I left only 1 year. See, I'm known for being the founding dean, but I was the backup person. I was not meant to be the founding dean. Sumantra Ghoshal and Deepak Jain were supposed to be the founding dean and executive dean. Sumantra chickened out, saying, "ये मुझसे ना होगा," right? We said, "चलो ठीक है, नहीं करना है तो मत करो." He said कि मैं involved रहूँगा, पढ़ाऊँगा. We said, ठीक है, as long as your name is associated, it's fine. अब तो दीपक जैन है ही हमारे पास. Deepak was number 2 at Kellogg, but then he became dean of Kellogg in May, and July 1 we were starting.
So then you had to kind of...
So then the board asked me to play the role. Rajat was keen. My partners were totally against it. Everybody was saying कि ये Rajat तुम्हें blackmail कर रहा है. You can't say no to Rajat. You are licking his ass. Some people said. I couldn't explain to them कि boss, I am so vested in this. I can't let this slide. My wife was also very annoyed. She said, नहीं मैं तो एक साल, and why are you disrupting your McKinsey career? Again, couple of big lessons, so.
You were a 1-year partner, 2-year partner.
I was 2 years a partner. So everybody was like, this will disrupt your career to director. Office mein people started saying you have such... What had happened is I had by then developed very strong relationships because of my ISB performance with all the board members. So I was serving a lot of these people. And where I was not serving, I was introducing them. Because I had developed a very strong relationship.
And these are our clients, our potential clients.
Correct. So, for example, and there were some places where I rescued relationships because of the... I mean, I was just... On the way here, I was being interviewed for a movie that is being made on Yogi Deveshwar, and one of the things that I was telling them about this incident where he and I were together, and I said, Yogi, why don't you work with McKinsey? He said, listen, we worked with McKinsey in the early days and we can't work with them. They did this. And I said, okay, what if I told you that you give us one more chance? I'll make sure that we won't do any of this, right? And sure enough, we got the chance and I made sure that it went well. So lots of those things started giving me fringe benefits. I was flying high at that time. So anyway, I still remember Rajat came home. So Rajat said, let me talk to Gauri. So he comes home. Masala dosa gana tha ghar pe. So I told Gauri कि पहले खावा लेते हैं उसके बाद बात करेंगे. She, of course, I went to do something to get drinks. मैं आया तो they were in full flow. And she said, Rajat was saying, no, but I think it's great for Pramath. It will be great for his career and so on. So she tells him, Rajat, if you think it's such a great idea, why don't you do it?
Or he had left, like
No, he was still there. So I was like, shit, my wife is telling the firm managing director, why don't you do it? और उसने छूटते बोला, because he will do a better job of this than I can. Now, you may think this is a cute answer, but he really meant it. And it was not about saying that Pramath is great or I am not so great. It was really about saying, different people for different, he was right. Rajat is not a guy who's going to, even if he was not managing it, he's not somebody who will get there, sit there. This goes back to my story about Patna, right? I was in there building it brick by brick. ये ठीक नहीं है, वो ठीक नहीं है, ये बनाओ, वो करो, because I was back into my elements, and that is what I enjoyed doing.
You like doing personal advising, yeah.
And my whole time at McKinsey, I believe I never looked at that side of it, because for me this was like, boss, this is what I'm good for. This is great. You get caught in that narrative. You never explore another side of yourself. So anyway. But interestingly, when this position of dean came up, everybody said, "Ye ho jayega, wo ho jayega, client." So I went and talked to Rajendra Pawar. NIIT was a client. He said, "Pramath, have you ever realized that there's a life outside McKinsey?
Yeah.
Do you know that one day you may not be there, but McKinsey will continue? McKinsey doesn't need you that much. Nor do you need. This is an amazing opportunity. If I was in a position, I would leave an IIT and do this. So don't think about it. Just do it." I was like, client ये बोल रहा है, ये लोग कह रहे हैं client lose. He said, and by the way, suppose I don't come back to you. You think you won't be able to get another client? You have to believe that you can do that, right? Anyway, so uska baat hua. Then I went to Don Jacobs. And I still remember he was the dean of Kellogg. He had become a good friend, but very senior guy. So I told him, Don. So he said, "I hope you're taking it." I said, "No, Don, I'm not sure." He said, "Pramath, how many people get the opportunity to build something that will outlast? Have you thought about it? Do you think this will be successful? You of all the people, do you believe it will be successful or not?" I said, "Of course, Don. I mean, we built this to make it successful."
Yeah.
If you believe this is successful, can you imagine what you are going to... This is a opportunity most people don't... I didn't get an opportunity to... How many people do you think will get an opportunity to build a institution that will leave a legacy, that will outlast them in your lifetime? You are not thinking. What are you thinking? He was the first guy who told me this. And it just hit me between the eyes. Right? This is what I was saying earlier. Right? Sometimes other people see with so much clarity. You think you're taking big decisions and so on, but others people just see so much clarity. And one thing they say completely changes the way you look at a problem. Right?
Amazing. So you were dean in the
1 to 2.
The founding 2002 batch.
Founding batch. Very close to them. Abhi हमारा 20th year था. I'm almost part of that batch. Now
Sachin Haralkar is part of that batch, right?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
This guy who just became Jubilant Foods ka.
Samir. I was with him yesterday.
Yes, Khetarpal is first batch.
Yesterday afternoon I met him at the Starbucks Bangalore airport one.
Yeah.
We spent a good half an hour.
हाँ, तुमने तो photo.
हाँ, मैंने photo भेजा के लाया.
हाँ, तो Samir Khetarpal is first batch.
Oh wow.
So first batch, I all know these guys, almost first name. So and I was there, and we became good friends. We had lots of flight. Prashant Vasu is the first batch.
Oh really?
Yeah, and they also took lots of. We had a lot of fun. They they all remember that on my birthday they threw me into the pool. Right, I'm sure they can't do that with the current dean.
Yeah, it's become a lot bigger and 2 campuses.
Yeah, but I think the big thing that brought us together was that year 9/11 happened.
Oh yeah.
And everything collapsed, and I worked my butt off to get everybody a job.
Oh wow, that was first batch of IIB was a 9/11 batch.
Yes. So everybody remembers that, right? And that ensuring outcomes in education is something that I'm very focused on, right? You can't get away in India by just saying education kara diya, people will be okay.
Amazing, because from the get-go, ISB was an aspirational institute.
So you know how we cracked that problem, Shantanu?
It's very hard. यार कितने लोग try करते हैं lovely. I don't know name.
नहीं कर सकते. And I'll tell you हमने कैसे crack किया, मैं तुम्हें 2 मिनट में बताता हूँ. ये मंत्रा है. And I'm very happy for others to copy it. Top notch बनानी है, क्या चाहिए? अच्छे स्टूडेंट्स चाहिए, अच्छी फैकल्टी चाहिए. स्टूडेंट्स आ जाएंगे, हमारे देश में बहुत ज़रूरी है. अच्छी इंस्टीट्यूशन बनाओगे, स्टूडेंट्स आ जाएंगे. लेकिन उनको क्या चाहिए? फैकल्टी अच्छी होनी चाहिए. अच्छी फैकल्टी नई यूनिवर्सिटी में नहीं आएंगे. दिल से भैया तुम बनाओ, अच्छा होगा तो मैं आ जाऊंगा. By definition, high quality faculty will not join you leaving where they are. Why would they? They are academics, they are inherently risk averse. They don't care about money. A lot of people who start universities think I'll give them $1 million salaries, and people have tried. Nobody will move. They don't care about $1 million. They care about respect. They care about reputation. They
And
care
working
about
with great students.
correct. So the analysis that we did at McKinsey was to say, okay, this is a chicken and egg problem. How do you break this? Let's focus on faculty. Why do you need faculty on campus? Why? You don't. You need faculty on campus if you want to do research, but that takes long years anyway.
Correct.
Because you do have to do research and education if you want to become top tier. What if we disaggregate it? We say, we'll do research over time, of course. But what if you had to do excellent teaching only from day one?
You have short windows.
You bring in visiting faculty. But people have been bringing visiting faculty. But what if you had the whole program with visiting faculty? Has anybody ever done that? Nobody. Do you have the courage to do that? Then you break the problem down and you say, okay, this is literally what we did. Let's go to the top 20 B schools, talk to all the Indians there and say, what will it take you to come to India? What is the most optimal duration of time? You plot it 5 weeks. Okay, we'll do 5 weeks, 6 weeks off for exams and reading, 5 weeks, 6 weeks off, 8 semesters, 6 weeks each. Now let's find 36, 40 guys who will come for 5 weeks to India. 20 years later, this is ISB's biggest strength. 2 campuses, 1,000 MBAs. This is the strength. We only have 70 permanent faculty. The Young India Fellowship, which is how Ashoka started, same model. 3 years, Young India Fellowship, established our reputation purely on the back of visiting faculty.
And visiting faculty through partnerships or through individual conversations?
That partnerships, individuals, and so on.
Does it turn out to be cheaper to do that as opposed to having $1 million salary for a...
Well, it's not that much cheaper than a permanent faculty, let's say. Maybe even more expensive.
To fly them in and all that.
But huge flexibility and agility, because now what if you then layer on feedback-based metrics to measure whether you should invite somebody back. Then you raise the bar every year. You say, in my distribution, these people I will politely disinvite, and these people I will secure. My stars.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So that's the real mantra behind this.
And this was this like a aha moment
Totally aha moment. There were instances of people trying this out. See, I find that there are very few ideas that others have not thought of. Right?
Correct.
So there was a program that Kellogg had created in Bangkok with Deepak Jain, who became the dean of Kellogg, had a similar visiting model. But they were not able to create this uncompromising focus, right? And obviously because Thailand and so on, they didn't have the people. So what here we did was we had absolutely a stellar lineup of faculty. So you look name after name. These were like people to die for. Right?
And also I'm assuming you would have people like you and Rajat saying McKinsey will recruit, Adi
of course.
They have industry coming in.
Yes, so that
faculty coming in.
So those were of course, and we got the Wharton Kellogg partnership, which was a big coup by Rajat, and he actually got them to agree to sign the certificates.
So it felt like
the first year certificate is signed by Pramath Sinha, Tom Garrity, and Don Jacobs.
It was like a 3 university thing.
But interestingly, we did the same thing for the Young India Fellowship.
Okay.
And that was where my equity with Penn really worked. Because what happened was when I went to the Penn provost to say, let's partner. And the Wharton guys helped me actually. And the guy refused. And I was really crestfallen. And I was walking back to the engineering school where I'm a graduate of, and met the dean. And he was like, why are you upset? I said, but he said, don't worry, I'll partner with you. I said, but Eduardo, you are an engineering school. I'm setting up a liberal. He said,
So what?
so what? And then it struck me, yeah, so what? So if you actually look at the certificates of the Young India Fellowship, which led to India's one of the leading liberal arts universities, the first year certificates are co-signed by the Dean of Engineering at University of Pennsylvania.
That's incredible.
So I think the partnerships helped. But today also, thanks to that partnership, three Penn faculty have come for every year of the Young India Fellowship program for the last 12 years.
Wow.
Every year. And these guys are getting old and we are trying to worry about whether we should, how long. But that's the commitment that they've made. Penn doesn't know, engineering school doesn't know what's going on, but these three faculty, because they love the students. And of course, you have to go the extra mile to, when the faculty come, in those days, used to have a car to pick them up, give them a cell phone, bring them to campus, give them an apartment, like a serviced apartment, food on campus, Indian faculty, weekends mein parents se milne jana hai, we'll make the arrangements, right? We'll give you an office, we'll give you an RA, we'll give you an assistant, you finish the papers that you haven't written. These were some of the things that I knew from my academic days. What do faculty need? Most people in even the top universities have a crowded, small office. They share assistants. There's nobody to really look after them. Here you say, boss, you're making a big effort to come here. We'll really look after you.
Also very McKinsey thing to do, right?
Yes.
Like how you treat McKinsey partners.
That's
it's
right.
like
That's
everything else we'll take care of.
Yes.
You just focus on what
you just focus on this. And there are multiple things we did. One of the things that I learned from Rajat, which has been true for both ISB and Ashoka, is this collective philanthropy, but shared governance.
Collective philanthropy and shared governance, okay?
So the idea is, if you look at the top universities of the world, and I still remember the aha moment when we were doing the research, is who owns Harvard? Who owns Oxford? Cambridge? We don't know. Yet, whoever is there feels like they own it.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the governance structure, who's on the boards, who's on the trustees, these are all alumni. Now, here, you don't have alumni. So how do you do it? You're going to raise money from rich people who made lots of money. They are blue blood entrepreneurs. They want to come in and say, मैं बना के दिखाता हूँ. Everybody thinks they know about education. मेरे साथ IIT कानपुर में ये हुआ था, मेरे साथ UPenn में ये हुआ था, तो मैं बताता हूँ तुम्हें कैसे बनाना चाहिए, right? Now, how do you avoid that? How do you avoid dominance by? So what you do is, you take whatever amount of money you can get from anybody, get the maximum amount of money, but you give everybody one vote. You put that as a condition from day one.
It's a hard conversation with a Sunil Munjal or a Analjeet Singh, right?
Tough.
So did you do that?
Yes, we all did that. We do that at Ashoka now. We have almost 200 founders at Ashoka, and this is our condition.
All billionaires.
Yes.
It's like boss one vote here.
And we also found a door through that कि भैया तुम 100 दे रहे हो, मैं 10 दे रहा हूँ, तो जो तुम 90 दे रहे हो, उसके लिए एक बिल्डिंग बना देते तुम्हारे लिए.
वोट नहीं मिलेगा.
वोट नहीं मिलेगा. नाम लगा देते हैं, नेम प्लेट लगा देते हैं, ड्राइववे नेम कर देते हैं, पोर्च नेम कर देते हैं, क्लासरूम नेम कर देते हैं, बिल्डिंग नेम कर देते हैं, लेकिन वोट एक नहीं मिलेगा. एंड सम पीपल कम एंड से कि यार 2 भाई हैं हम लोग, दोनों आ जाते हैं. या early days of Ashoka, we said no to 300 crores when we hadn't raised 300 crores because they said we want 4 board members. बस हो बे ना, नहीं हो सकता, नहीं करेंगे. It will completely spoil our model. So I think that, how do you replicate that feeling that no one owns, but everyone owns. And so recently again, Ashish stepped away from the chairman role. I've taken on the chairman role.
Ashish who?
Ashish Dhawan.
Dhawan,
Yeah. And that's again part of that model. At ISB, we've had Rajat Gupta, we've had Adi Godrej, we have Harish Manwani, we'll have another chairman. Important to not just दिखाने के वास्ते, but really important कि अगर institution बना रहे हो, it has to outlast individuals, has to.
It's also a very McKinsey. It's a very McKinsey.
Correct. I mean, it's the whole partnership, rotating leadership model, right? By the way, McKinsey is very much set up like an academic institution.
Very few people recognize
That's right. So the whole
no portal, like
correct,
incentivizing people, not really having capital. It's considered a capitalist center, but if you see, incentives of partners are very, very fluid.
Correct. And the whole tenure system is the same as the partner election system.
Absolutely. Very similar actually.
Yeah, it's
7 साल, all of that.
बिल्कुल. It's okay if people don't make it. ISB में हमारे पास 70 ही faculty हैं, but 70 didn't stay, either left or didn't get tenure, and so I think setting that high bar in academia and in McKinsey is a lot of parallels. So anyway, that's how education happened.
And then you kind of really did like with Vedica and Harappa, and like you just found amazing opportunities to kind of keep building on the.
That is a little bit of McKinsey thing where I said that I want to do things that are different. There's no point in doing stuff that others are also doing. Others are anyway doing it. So there's some fun in having fun doing multiple models. So I'm doing a design school in Ahmedabad.
Is this with an ID or is it something?
No, it's Ajay Piramal and a bunch of people on the board. This visiting faculty model at BITSOM, which is this BITS Pilani School of Management, we've made it into a block teaching model.
Okay.
Block teaching is one course at a time. So you'd come, teach microeconomics for 2 weeks. Come, teach marketing for 2 weeks. You have the students captive for 2 weeks.
They don't do anything else.
They don't do another subject. They do one subject at a time. Now this is again a copycat from an undergraduate program in the US. Few schools do, 4-year liberal arts college, Colorado College being the most prominent. So for a long time I used to struggle with this. How do you replicate this visiting faculty model at the undergraduate level? So I started looking for it. तो मुझे कहीं मिला नहीं, और लोग कहते हैं कि भाई यार बच्चों को कैसे विजिटिंग फैकल्टी में पढ़ाओगे यार, उनको तो मतलब ठीक से पढ़ाइए, विजिटिंग फैकल्टी नहीं चलेगा, उनके लिए केवल पोस्ट ग्रेड के लिए वर्क करता है. तो I'd been racking my brains, कैसे सॉल्व करें. Suddenly I saw this Colorado College model where even permanent faculty teach for 2 weeks. I said, boom, this is the way to get visiting faculty now. So I have to only get you for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So at BITSOM, that entire 2-year MBA program is 2 weeks.
You study and you give the exam, you pass it and you study.
Yeah. But you can, now there's tomes and tomes written about the merits of the pedagogical philosophy behind this. But what people don't realize that I'm solving a faculty problem using this.
A supply utilization.
Correct. So suddenly, if you look at today, BITSOM can attract even people who won't have the 5 weeks to come to ISB. And we are getting people who are coming for 2 weeks because they love saying, 2 weeks kya hai yaar, Bombay mein, Hiranandani mein, 2 hafte aao, teach karo, and bright students.
Oh, BITSOM is in Bombay, is it?
It's located in Bombay.
That makes it a lot easier.
Yes. But you see, if our regulations could allow it, you could create a whole undergrad program around block teaching because Colorado College does it. It's an undergrad program. 4 years. 2 weeks throughout. Who said that you have to study 4 things at a time? You can study 1 thing at a time.
You might actually study it better. Like, I don't know. I'm not an educator.
That's why there's pedagogically. But you see, that's the thing. Pedagogically, you could argue one way or the other and you can have detractors. But imagine, compared to what here, you're getting top-notch faculty relative to the faculty that you wouldn't get. You'd rather do it this way than any other way.
This way with great faculty versus another way with mediocre.
Correct. And the big door for us in India, why online makes so much sense, because it's the ultimate in visiting faculty.
Yeah. Up to the geographical constraint is gone.
Totally gone. So I think that's the big insight that I feel with Harappa.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger thing about Harappa is that I think people don't realize that online learning is as fundamental a shift as the advent of printed books. So when the printing press came, and going back to the beginning,
Ashok Press.
yes, Gutenberg invented the printing press in the 1300s. When it first came, people would use it to print Bibles. Same as the internet. People had email, people had social media, but nobody really talked about this being education. Suddenly somebody said, we can now print textbooks. So 600 years later, Pramath Sinha is sitting in Patna, wants to learn physics, he buys Resnick and Halliday. Two Purdue professors who he doesn't know, and learns whatever physics he needs to know to get into IIT by studying Resnick and Halliday.
And he would never have met them before.
You would never have met them before, but that's what revolutionized education. And when the books first came, people said, यार ये शांतनु सब बुक्स लगा के बैठा है, किसी बुक को पढ़ा नहीं है, दिखाने के लिए लगाया हुआ है। और कैसे सीख जाएगा वो बुक पढ़ के? उसको फिजिक्स समझ आएगी बुक पढ़ के? हो ही नहीं सकता, जब तक कोई समझाएगा नहीं उसको, बैठ के सिखाएगा नहीं उसको, नहीं पढ़ सकता. But it happened.
Yeah.
And the thing was that many more people had access to that quality of physics teaching. And sure enough, there were a lot of people who thought they were learning and they read through those pages and they couldn't absorb it. But there were people who could.
Who could, yeah.
And those numbers were much larger than the people who weren't getting that education without the book. Same point.
Yeah.
That's what's happening with this. Suddenly now, you and I can become Resnick and Halliday.
Yeah.
Suddenly now, you and I can teach how to build a business, how to, give feedback, which is what I do at Harappa, right? Many more people have access to the methods of giving feedback that we used to be taught at McKinsey. Everybody can now have access to that.
Yeah.
But today, we have still not quite figured out how to make this as engaging as the book as a format. It took a time. I must have taken time. I haven't studied the history, but how do you organize chapters?
Yeah.
How do you have questions at the end of the book, end of the chapter? How do you have answers in the end? Somebody would have said, let's put the answers inverted so that students won't cheat. Right?
Yeah.
So I think what ultimately I want to do, what I'm trying to do through Harappa is really figure out how do you make people learn, truly learn in this way, which is fundamentally different from just replicating the classroom. And it's fascinating because one of the things you are realizing is that if you really want to make this effective, you have to, at least in what I know now, and I still have to figure this out, is that and everybody is figuring this out, is that you need to have guided online.
That's amazing. What are all the education projects you're a part of? Bitswam is something I did not know about, but Harappa, are you involved with now?
Yes. No, we have merged with Upgrad, but I'm still very involved. I'm still building it out.
And Ashoka, Young India Fellowship, ISB, Bitswam, Vedica. No, I must tell you, the people we have from Vedica, outstanding.
That's
outstanding.
great.
They joined 4 management trainees, all converted to permanent jobs, doing amazing work.
Yeah, those goes back to my thing about what I realized when I was interviewing women at the Young India Fellowship as well as at ISB was that women are still getting left behind.
Yeah.
And given what I told you about how I grew up, I wish I could do Vedica and Anuradha who's running it. I know she also has aspirations, but I would love to do a women-only university because I do think that they are traded off against certain norms that are unfortunate. But that's why you see these people in Vedica who have
Fire in the
great,
belly.
yes. And that was the other realization. You know, I've suffered from grades, ranks, scores. And it is true that if you're trying to build an ISB and Ashoka, then you have to, you know, there are more people applying. But at least at Vedica, we've tried to stay away from that. I don't know how long we'll be able to. But if you can just focus on attitude, drive,
Intrinsics, yeah.
aspiration, ambition, then you see a very different kind of person or professional.
Do you think the government can do more?
Of course. Of course. Of course.
Because you have shown that, like, a lot of people say privatizing education is not the best way for learning outcome. But you have shown that's not the case. You can create world-class institutions with world-class talent and professional outcomes through privatization. But government, like for example, to be very honest, when I go to my alma mater, IIT Nagpur or IIM Lucknow, I am very disappointed with infrastructure, quality of faculty, research, everything. Like the entry is great. Great people go there and then they just have to find ways to challenge themselves in peer groups, get good jobs and then move on or get a good master's. The institute plays a very limited role. It's very unfortunate because I love my colleges.
Same here. Yeah.
I love them for the people I've studied with. I don't love them for the people who taught me. Unfortunately, I did not like. I just found I think I got educated despite and not because of. So I think government, and maybe these are just two data points in a much larger group. You are from IIT Kanpur and are you seeing government-driven institutions kind of lagging behind on?
Yeah, because
you talk about very world class.
Yeah, I think what is happening is that there's tremendous load on these institutions because there's need to educate many, many more people. I've often said this again, that I think never in the history of the human race have you had to educate so many people so quickly.
Yeah.
Never. So what is happening is you're applying solutions from a time when this demand was not there.
Yeah.
So those solutions don't work.
Yeah.
So I was at my 35th year reunion at IIT Kanpur. The hostel rooms have 3 students, where we used to be 2 to a room. And it's not that Kanpur doesn't have money. I don't know what the answer is. And they are building more hostels. But the truth is there are many more people crammed. That also translates into heavy teaching load for faculty.
Yeah.
Listen, the top universities of the world actually pride themselves in a low teaching load. In fact, the US things have gone to another extreme where people refuse to teach because they think, they are too evolved, right? Which I don't think is fair to students. If you are in an educational institution, this shouldn't be this trade-off. Yeah. You're a good researcher, you're a good teacher, you should do both. So I do think that what has happened in our country is that we are severely constrained for resources. That's why our GER, the gross enrollment ratio for higher education, is still touching between 25 and 30%, which is a low number relative to less developed economies. And so you are dependent on the private sector.
Yeah.
What has happened is that in the private sector, there are people with good and bad intent, mission, priorities. And we haven't quite developed the ability to differentiate.
Yeah.
So then you create regulations, you create norms that apply to the lowest rung, which then constrains everyone. I think the answer is in what has been done around the world, which is to actually do accreditation rather than regulation. There is regulation. There is a low bar for entry, but a very high bar for accreditation.
Yeah.
And accreditation is actually independent of the regulator.
Yeah, has to be.
Yes. Now, we have tried to do that here, but our accreditation is a problem. There's only NAC, which is a quasi-government accreditator, which is part of the regulator technically actually. No fault of theirs. Again, they are severely constrained for resources. So very few institutions, even though NAC is now required, are actually accredited properly. And if you really want to drive high quality accreditation, then you need many more accreditation bodies, respected ones, independent, truly independent ones who apply a high bar and really say कि boss ये 5-star है और ये नहीं है 5-star, ये 4-star है, ये कभी 5-star हो नहीं सकता. And it's okay because you'll have institutions at all levels. So I think it's complex and
I completely, and you kind of focus on business studies or liberal arts and so on, right? If I think about it, I was talking to someone who's telling me that she's a CA, has to pay 8,000 rupees to be a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Their course material has remained completely stagnant for ages. So CA is now massive supply. The entry salary for a CA has gone down. So how do you do really high quality accounting studies? No one is putting, because it's a very there's no alumni group, right?
Correct.
It's completely distributed.
Yes.
पता ही नहीं कैसे करना है.
बिल्कुल.
IS, civil services. Again, all the top civil servants are fully busy doing work for the government. Who's focusing on the training, coaching of India's elite people like your sister, for example?
Yeah.
Because that has not changed so education as a problem. It's a very, very difficult, and skilling for the new way. Look at probationary officers in banks.
Yes.
It's a skill.
Yeah.
And you have to train them, and everyone depend on them tomorrow.
Yeah.
But the training is 1990s.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I think the problem we are struggling with is a problem of scale, Shantanu. And I do think that this is the opportunity for India, and also the biggest challenge is to really be able to solve for these at scale without compromising quality.
Yeah.
And I don't think that solutions exist.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that this problem is not solved for.
Yeah.
The problem of how to build great universities is actually solved for.
Yeah.
What we are doing at Ashoka is replicating a lot of the lessons and squishing it into a few years. Even ISB is an innovation for India, a lot of good things bringing together, but all ideas that had been tried, just bringing it all together. I think this problem is not solved.
Yeah. And I'm not sure whether depending on the government to solve it or may not be the right answer. It could have been when post-independence and so on.
No, I'm actually, again, it's very interesting because you really have to truly remove all constraints and think of this from a clean sheet, we used to say.
Open sky.
Yeah. Now, people are saying the importance of degrees is going to go away, higher education is getting disrupted. I'm almost saying, okay, if 75% of our students are not getting higher education degrees, why don't we ask ourselves the question, why do they need it? Not because I'm getting disrupted or because, it has no relevance. I think we don't need degrees. Why try to build universities? Why not actually try to enable them to get proper skills and employment? And of course, for the people who want to discover themselves or to explore themselves and to learn about the universe, they can go to a university and do that. And by the way, if you actually think of the ancient universities, it was people who really did feel that they were not constrained by the need to have a job that went to these places.
Yeah.
Because they could free themselves up, they could afford to free themselves up from a vocation. So higher education was really meant for the people who had earned the right to be elite. So they could contemplate the universe, they could contemplate and think about philosophy and literature and so on. But the person who wanted to be a blacksmith didn't need to go to a university. The person who needed to build things didn't need to go to a university. They would go join the job, learn at the feet of, apprenticeship model. And those who aspired or felt that they didn't need to do that, they didn't need the job, they were bent for better things, would go to a university. So and I'm not saying that people should be relegated and treated as second class. You don't have to be.
It's okay to be a blacksmith.
If you again go back to my own example, I could have got the Tata Burroughs job without doing 4 years of engineering. I just needed to do that one programming course. So I really do think that we have to rethink even more fundamentally कि अगर हम बना ही नहीं सकते इतनी यूनिवर्सिटीज, अगर हम ला ही नहीं सकते इतने क्लासरूम्स, हम ला ही नहीं सकते इतने PhDs और एकेडमिक्स, तो एक नया मॉडल ही क्रिएट कर दो. उसमें कहो कि भैया तुम सॉफ्टवेयर प्रोग्रामर बन जाओ, कोडर बन जाओ, या AI यूज करना सीख लो, चैट GPT यूज करना सीख लो. उसके लिए तुम्हें बस इतना कुछ करना है.
4 साल की जरूरत नहीं, 1 साल की जरूरत.
1 साल का कर लो, और उसके बाद अगर तुम्हें 4 साल की डिग्री चाहिए तो वो है, अवेलेबल है, कर लो. हम ये नहीं करें कि तुम गुड इनफ नहीं हो, बिल्कुल करो, बट इसलिए करो कि तुम्हें रियली करना है, ज़रूरत है, और तुम अफोर्ड कर सकते हो, और बोथ नॉट फ्रॉम अ मनी बट टाइम पर्सपेक्टिव.
So, like the way you delineated research from teaching, delineate employability from learning.
Correct.
Because we assume the latter is fully required for the farmer.
अब देखो, ऑलरेडी तुम वेदिका से रिक्रूट कर रहे हो, विच इज नॉट अ सर्टिफाइड और अक्रेडिटेड और रेगुलेटेड कोर्स. एक तरह से तुम ही ने कर दिया डील. अब हमने
तो आप पे ट्रस्ट कर लिया कि प्रमोद ने किया है, अच्छे होंगे लोग,
हाँ,
ले लो. अब एक बार एक्सपीरियंस हो गया, नाउ वी डोंट नीड योर दिस थिंग.
The other day I sent you a resume of somebody who's done a 6-month online accelerated management program. हाँ. Now the thing is, this will never get accredited or degreed or approved by any regulator. It's okay, as long as he works out for you and I have added value to him. Already we've now placed the first 4 of the students of the first batch. They are already getting 50-60% hikes, but more than that, they're able to pivot. They all want to pivot. They want to get out of what they are doing and get on to another trajectory. Now, I'm also discovering that I can actually do that. I'm doing the equivalent of my mini MBA.
Yeah. PhD और BA को ले लिया, mini MBA करा दिया. Now you're client facing, client ready.
Correct.
Fascinating conversation. I think before we wrap up, Pramath, I think first of all, I think talking to you about education is an education in itself, because no, genuinely, like as a founder, you sometimes get sucked into the rigmarole of building business and so on, and every chat I've had is always about talent. At the end of the day, founders feel that the biggest slingshot for them is great talent, and the source of great talent is on universities and educational institutions that we rely on so heavily to create great talent. But the more I realize, the more I think we are shorting ourselves by not contributing to, the way you have in creating institutions in our own way. Like, for example, you invited me to Bihar. I was not able to make it because of health reasons, but I wish that I could spend more time. I do it as much as possible within the guardrails of feedback and training and coaching for Bombay Shaving Company and some small things that I do here and there. But otherwise, I think the role that individually is there on all of us to participate in educating and passing on learnings in a more practical way is very, very high. So that's what I have taken away. Of course, building institutions is a...
No, and we don't have to all build institutions. Even if we all just contribute in the very cliched saying of just educate one person, correct, 2 people, I think you can make a huge difference.
This, for example, is for our viewers who are... Saisha was just telling me that, hey, so many people who watch our podcast want to go to ISB or want to do an MBA. They'll watch this with their eyes wide open, taking everything in. So even efforts like this, or I do, for example, I go and teach at IIM Lucknow on entrepreneurship or whatever.
Must do.
Try to do it as much as possible, but nowhere near enough, I think.
I was just at a McKinsey reunion in Dubai, and this is what they asked me to speak, and I said, listen, you don't have to all build institutions or just pick an institution, just go teach.
Yeah.
Teach however much you can. You don't have to even go back to your alma mater. If you live in a colony, find out if there's a college, find out if there's a school, and if somebody is willing to let you come, just contribute 1 hour, 2 hours. Huge value addition, huge value. People just need inspiration at the end of the day.
Agree. So that's something I've taken away fully. I do want to touch upon, we speak about McKinsey with almost, you're obviously so much more senior than me and, spent a lot more time. But, starry-eyed about the firm because of the impact it had on us. You've publicly spoken about Rajat a lot, and I think what happened with him, he's written it in a book, and, to go from the pinnacle of glory, probably the most successful Indian professional CEO at the time and for a long time, to being as enigmatic and influential in India, to building out McKinsey India, to PHFI, to ISB, to all the things that you guys did together. And then to go through what was probably one of the most public um, trials of character at that age and with that kind of um, pedigree and contribution. It hurt, like my family and I'd have no personal equation with him, but my mother, my father is from the corporate world. He was CEO of Tech Mahindra, and he's from the world but never involved with, maybe on NASCOM somewhere here and there. But I remember when I got recruited into McKinsey, it was 2011, so it was very fresh at that time. And I remember feeling extremely hurt that an institution that had just made me a job offer
is going through.
And my mother is like, I look at his face and I feel that he's someone I can trust. I always feel that my parents lived in the US for many years.
Yeah.
Many years. And my father said, something is wrong. And even the firm is polarized, right? The alumni of the firm are polarized as to say, hey, values and this and that, rather than like, hey, if you do this kind of scrutiny on anyone, go and find something. So you have a very personal, deeply mentor-mentee relationship with Rajat. How did that affect you? I'm sure it did, but
of course it did.
Touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it affected me a lot. I have to tell you that in the ISB journey, there was Rajat, Anil Kumar, and me. And I've often thought about the fact that, wow, I mean, two of the people I worked with, which led to what I have today, were involved in one of the biggest corporate scandals in recent times. And they were associated with me, they were in the firm, I worked closely with them. So of course it's scary. I mean, sometimes I feel like, wow, I could have been involved. Maybe if I had been older or their contemporary, or if I had been in the US, I could have gotten involved in these deals or these. I mean, after all, we did ISB together.
Yeah.
Could have been doing something else together. But you know, I did have to, and it was tough because, I mean, it's certainly not as tough as it is for Rajat and his family, and I've seen that up close. Watching that was tough. But it was tough to see your, you know, when my father passed away, I was very heartbroken, and I remember talking to Rajat and saying that, you know, now you are my father figure. And I really feel that way about him. I do feel that a lot of the opportunities I've gotten, what I've learned in my life, how you should be as a person, as an individual, as in education, governance, stuff very nuanced things which I learned from him. I owe him. So it was very hard to reconcile. I remember one day, Ranjit Pandit and I going for a dinner by ourselves during the peak of this and saying, let's just go for dinner and let's not today talk about what happened. We'll just talk about everything else. We won't invite anybody else, just the two of us. We'll just talk. Because we were both quite. I remember going to Bukhara, and you know how tables are not too far away. What would you believe that right at the next table came a couple and another man, and the entire evening they talked about Rajat. And they said how well they knew him, and they were from New York, and you know, drive is driven by what you think is driven by what you want to be, right? Be, think, do.
Yeah.
And if you work it backwards, then what do I do? Okay, how should I think about it, and therefore, what do I really want to be? And when you go to the core of that, I realize that this is a person who has been my inspiration and is my friend, and that will never change.
Yeah.
And so I have my theory about what happened. And when I feel up to it and I know that I'm happy to take on the pushback and the debates and the arguments, and I share it. Otherwise, my simple thing is, listen, whatever he did, this is my friend, and I will always respect him. That took a big weight off my shoulders. So then I made it a practice that whenever I went to the US during the time he was in jail, I would always visit him, every time. Because listen, if your friend is in jail, you'll go see him, no? If your family member is in jail, you'll go see him. So what's to say? What's to do? Why should I justify? And so I think that really made our relationship even stronger. He wrote the book and I take some credit for it. I don't know if he'll accept it, but it's okay, it doesn't matter. But I did play a big role in pushing him to write the book. I also felt that the book didn't need to be about the controversy, though. It may have become a little bit like that, but it's really about his life. It's a remarkable life.
Yeah.
And life's like that. It's not always all high.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge lesson. I think it's a very powerful lesson for me personally. I think Rajat got involved in a lot of things, probably lost track of everything he was involved in and what was going on. And I haven't said this, but it's very clear that he was led quite a bit by Anil. I've seen that relationship. Now, you can always say, listen, he's not a babe in the woods. He didn't have to, and a lot of people question. All those things are true, but it's important what company you keep. It's important that one doesn't get carried away. I think if Rajat has one fault, and I really do, he's too trusting of people, always was. You can't complain to Rajat about anybody. He was almost to a fault not say bad things about anyone. He's continuing to help anyone and everyone, regardless of. I've learned those lessons also. But I do think that ultimately it does come down to, regardless of how everybody else thinks, it sounds a bit cliched, but you have to evaluate your own relationship with that person and then deal with that. So in this case, I do think that there were things that happened which were unfortunate, that you have to be careful what you say. You may be thinking other things, but out of context it can sound very different. So one has to be measured in our conversations. It's not talking without being too careful about the implications. You can never be too careful. I think when you're building big things, talking to important people, be very careful. You really mean what you're saying.
Yeah.
You think about how it sounds. Who you associate with is as important as what you do. I think that's very important. I do think I've become much more tough about that, uncompromising about that. But at the end of the day, I do think that was also I have been again very inspired by Rajat about the way he conducted himself through all this. A lot of people say that, oh, what's so great? I mean, but listen, I can tell you that whatever happened, the truth is Rajat Gupta had resigned from the Goldman board. You can call it the tyranny of fate. It's true that he had resigned. He was asked to stay on. And he chose to stay on because they were saying, "Nee, don't resign right now." All of this could still have happened, but he wouldn't have gotten so much in trouble if he had been off the board. If he really wanted to do insider trading, he wouldn't have resigned from the board. But, and when this whole thing broke, there are countless number of people who've been accused of insider trading during that period of time who settled. The great thing in the US is you can settle anything, pay a fine, get off. I have lots of good friends who probably did trade, did do insider, but nobody knows about the fact that they were even accused. Rajat chose to fight. I told him, Rajat, how did you face such challenging is not even a word, such a torturous, demeaning thing. The place he writes about in the book, it used to be called the shoe. So it's basically it's called a shoe because it's like being locked in a shoe. And he said that, Pramath, I discovered that the only way to feel that you can put up with that kind of distress is to just imagine that what others are going through. I think you may think of it as a corny thing to say, but I think it's such a huge realization when you think about that. And that's the only way. And he said that, I was looking at what was happening to others and I was like thinking, my God, he was saying that people here for false charges of possession just because they are from the wrong race, locked up for 30 years. Their families have deserted them, they have no access to legal help. Kuch nahi hai. Endless hai unka life. So again, the resilience, a lot of people say that he hasn't apologized. He could, listen, he stood in front of the Penn IIT. My sister was there. She sent me a recording. He stood in front of the entire Penn IIT audience and said, I feel badly for having let you down. I know how much you all respected me, and this is not something that I feel, I let you down. He says it. Now, I think I hope nobody ever has to go through something like what he got to, but at the end of the day, I feel sad. But I think it's one of, even in what happened, he's left us with a life lesson of both what not to do as well as how to deal with if you have a crisis.
I completely agree. Thanks for sharing. So, it's a very deeply, to think of someone who's done what he did for decades, to give back to India, to build out what he did, to achieve what he did, and to get, in my view, I'm too young and all that, I'm also not directly involved, but from a very limited vantage point, to get a punishment so drastically disproportionate to what was actually done in the public eye and in actual reality. But you're right, to come out of it the way he has, I think you can see his eyes are still so sharp.
Totally.
He's still like उत्तेजित बोलते हैं उसको, like आंखों में वो जो है ना, वो अभी भी it's completely intact. I'm so glad that he's kind of come out of it, and with the resilience only someone like him probably has.
Yeah, and I think that has been deeply inspiring for me personally. Again, and I mean, when I do share this sometimes and talk about it, I know sometimes people think that I'm biased and that I'm in denial or that I'm being naive. But I only know that I don't, and I don't mean I don't care, I'm conscious, but I only know that, listen, if a close friend or family member or somebody who's a blood relative, something like this happened, you wouldn't care, na, ki hua, nahi hua, kya hua. Mera wo relationship hai. I am not a...
That's what you said, when your father passed away, he's your father figure, that's it.
Yeah.
Now you stand in front of him, take the bullet in the chest,
Correct.
he's your father figure.
Correct.
Doesn't matter who
क्या
shooting him.
हुआ क्या नहीं हुआ कौन केयर करता है मतलब and वो दूसरों को समझाना मुश्किल होता है because they think I'm arguing as a professional.
This is not, this is beyond McKinsey.
That's right. And I mean, I was just with somebody this weekend, and you know, at McKinsey events like this, Rajat's name always comes up, and these are all people from that era. And I feel sad because you know, I think he has helped every one of us.
So many of them owe him.
Every one of us. And I know that he's conscious of the fact that McKinsey and a lot of people just dropped him.
Yeah.
And yes, the firm had to do it. But I would say that ISB, I would, by the way, the hardest thing for me was when I had to call him to ask him to resign.
From the ISB board.
From the ISB board. I was the guy who did that. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And he was initially stunned, right? I mean, it's not like he wouldn't have done it. I mean, he's the first one who would have. But at that time, it was in the thick of all this was going on. And in the middle of it, I had to call him when he was doing all kinds of shit. I couldn't imagine what would be going on at home, wife, kids, and so on. And I'm calling to say, Rajat, I'm sorry, but you know, I've asked you to step down. And Anita, his wife, has often told me that, you know, you guys didn't back him at that time. And it hurts and I feel bad. But I had to do it for ISB, and that time also I had to be very clear that at this time I am doing this for the institution because the institution has to be protected and then people are not going to listen to. So it's been tough, and I don't know what life lessons I've learned, but they certainly hit hard. I hope I never have to use these lessons in a similar situation. But yeah, it's tough when you see that I know who all he has helped. That is also a lesson. I think there's something, gratitude goes beyond.
I agree.
You know, just because somebody screwed up, right? You can't forget
what they did for you. I completely
what
agree.
they did.
Back and forth between Bill and Rajat. When Rajat offered to resign from the Gates Foundation board, and he said no.
Yes.
And then he said, no, I have to. And then
Yes.
Bill reluctantly agreed. I think it was a period of a few months and so on.
Yeah.
And even that website where all the Ambani brothers, Adi, all these people wrote, came in, put in videos.
Yeah.
You could see that the power of people who are saying everyone at certain levels make mistakes, but the pros and the contributions of this gentleman are far beyond some of these. You could call them crimes, you could call them oversights, you could call them careless mistakes, you could call them whatever. I would say if you do a Fortune 500, if you do that kind of needle in the haystack kind of search with an overzealous attorney general on any of the Fortune 500 CEOs, you'll find something worse than what you found on Rajat. All of these guys talk on the phone with each other after board meetings, always find something. Sure, could you have done things better? Fair enough. But I do think it is completely disproportionate. But thank you for sharing. I think it's a learning lesson for all of us that
I do think it's a learning. I think the thing about this now that it has happened is that one should take the learnings away. One should really look at what could have been done differently.
Yeah.
How could he have not avoided getting into this situation, whether he did or not.
Yeah.
And also how you deal with crisis, how you deal with situations like this. I think that's the inspiring part of this story, a sad story, but
a lot of people had said, no, Indians won't be CEOs in corporate America for a long time. Look at what's happened now, right? And we'll have an Indian at the helm of McKinsey for sure. I think sooner rather than later, but I'm glad that that's not happened. And I hope that he kind of comes back with a bang. And is he in Delhi now?
No, he lives in, I don't think he will come back with a bang. I don't think he wants to. I think he's quite happy.
In whatever way he defines a bang. It could be teaching, I don't know.
No, so he's very involved in supporting many institutions, many people, the people who are his best friends are. I think that's the thing about him. I think, I tell you, I mean, I think he's always been for me a lesson in humility, equanimity, looking out for other people. Again, talking about people, my wife suffered from a debilitating illness, and I remember that I was struggling with it. He knew about it. One day, I think we were flying from somewhere to somewhere, and he said, "Explain to me what the problem is." So I told him. He said, "Why don't you talk to my former partner, colleague from Scandinavia, who's the head of Egon Zehnder now. His wife is a very famous doctor in New York. It's very tough to get hold of her. I'll call her and you go see her." And it happened, and it changed our lives. Now, I mean, I hadn't remembered this incident till we started talking. This is one of the insignificant things in my life, but a huge thing, right?
In your life, yeah.
Not at the end of the day, yeah, I may have done a lot of work with him, but as ISB, I didn't grow up. I'm not a peer. I'm not as close as I am to a lot of people who are my peers here. But here's a man who's interested, wants to know, how can I help? Goes out of the way, makes it happen, changed our life, right? We are so, I mean, I remember that this woman did massive surgery, and when she came out, we were both of us, we thought of her as God. That was the problem, that was the extent of the problem we were dealing with, and this was an introduction by Rajat. Didn't have to think about it, didn't have to go out of his way कि Pramath की wife को help करने के लिए, offering. No, I'm not even asking. I didn't even know he would know.
Yeah.
I was not even talking to him, "Hey Shantanu, do you know some people who can help with this problem?" He's a guy who's saying, "I know there's a problem. What's actually going on? बताओ मुझे." And मैं बताता हूँ, मैं call करता हूँ, and follow through. क्या हुआ? Yes, that's what life is about. I mean, then it doesn't matter what the person does. No,
I agree completely. On that somber note, Pramath, thank you so much. I think your generosity with your time, your insights, your intellect, and your wisdom is just, we're all deeply grateful for.
No, I'm grateful for you for. I was having FOMO because I was not showing up on your Instagram feed.
No, now there'll be a lot of you for a long time. I think today we have, but I do think that there is opportunity for a chapter 2 with you, because I do want to go. I have a lot of things I wanted to go deeper on women and Vedica and mentorship and entrepreneurship. I think the core topics जो BarberShop पे usually people talk about, we have not touched today. No, it's my fault completely, because I do think today was extremely rich, but I do think second one is very much on the cards.
Happy to.
But thank you so much, Pramath. It's been an absolute privilege.
No, privilege is completely mine. You're a great listener, and it just felt like we were truly just chatting at home or something.
As it should.
Thank you.
Do I have to give Pramath something? Yes, we have
a
small hamper. Yes.
Oh my God.
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks a lot. Oh, my trimmer is running out of
battery.